We'll call the Thursday, September 21st, 2023 Town of Rome Board meeting to order. Roll call starting on my left.
Capel here.
Minter here.
Jumati here.
Cole here.
Barheit here.
Certify the posting of the meeting.
I certify that on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, the agenda for the Town of Rome Board meeting for Thursday, September 21st, 2023 was posted at the Rome Town Hall at 1:30 p.m., posted at Quick Trip LLC at 3:53 p.m., posted at Nakusa Port Edward State Bank at 3:57 p.m., emailed to the Wisconsin Rapids Tribune at 1:26 p.m.
Okay. Item number 4, approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda with the following changes. I'd like to move item 20 up to after item 11. So Brad has got a function that he needs to attend to. The other thing is to add an item to immediately begin the search to fill the Rome Town Administrator's position by negotiating with GovHR for their services.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Bauerheit and a second by Supervisor Cole to begin a search for a town administrator using the services of GovHR. Discussion?
Madam Chair, can I ask for some clarification? Since we're on the agenda item
Yeah.
of approving the agenda, are you making that as a referral or asking that to be added to tonight's agenda?
Adding to tonight's agenda.
You can't do that because we haven't noticed it. It wouldn't meet the notice requirements for an agenda.
We can do that offline then. I'll move that we do it offline as far as starting the negotiation with GovHR so that at the next meeting, we have those details to consider.
It sounds like what you're doing is asking for a referral to the next agenda.
And that would be done under next agenda items. Is that correct? So I am calling this out of order.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Fine, we'll do it at the end then.
Correct. Thank you. By now, after 6 years, you would understand an agenda. Thank you.
What about moving number 20? That was the other point.
I understand that you have things to do tonight. Is it just your budgets you're requesting, Brad? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we'll move the highway and solid waste up after item 11. Is that what you're requesting? Thank you. So we have a motion to approve the agenda and a second with the moving of the highway and solid waste budgets. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Pledge of Allegiance. Item 6, do we have any orange cards?
No.
We do have one that we received late at our last meeting. I'll read it now. This was an email received from a Jeff Auberger from Stibnitz Builders. Citizen comments, Dear Rome Town Board, my name is Jeff Auberger. I am a property owner in the township at 287 Penhurst Way. I would like the comment below read in and answered, please, during the budget meeting tomorrow of September 14th, 2023. It was too late to read it at that time. As the board is aware, the vast majority of property owners are opposed to the development of a solar farm in our township. As the town who generates the largest amount of revenue for Adams County, the need for additional revenue by our township or our county at the expense of its property owners seems very short-sighted. While this budget meeting may not be the correct forum to further speak against it, it does not seem the appropriate time to ask why. Does the board deem the additional revenue valuable or necessary? And why is the board entertaining such a project? Frankly speaking, I believe the revenue generated from property taxes in our township is obscene, especially given the burden on the community by those property tax owners. I suspect the majority who own here and enjoy the benefits of recreation and relaxation as a second home, and therefore don't require the typically burdensome needs of a traditional community. I'm concerned that what makes Rome a success story and so desirable for so many is put at risk with such an endeavor. I would add that, as an example, having the ATV-UTV trails shut down during peak youth season is ridiculous. It was inconvenient and disappointing. You know well the impact of lost trails with the development of Sand Valley, the idea that even more will be lost to a project like this, not to mention the other impacts, diminish what we are and what we want to be as a town of Rome, in my opinion. Please tell us why this is being entertained and what your position is on it, and how, as property owners, do we ensure that it is stopped. Thank you in advance for your response. Sincerely, Jeff Auberger. The board will also take comment from the public on agenda items as called by the chair, but not during citizen comment. Please note that once the board begins discussion on the agenda item, no further comment will be allowed from the public on that issue. No action contemplated except possible referral to a future agenda item. Number 7, informational updates, meeting recaps, recent correspondence, current events, and announcements. And I will start. We do have an update on the solar town hall meeting. Given the town's ambitious budget schedule, Board of Review assessment dates, regular meeting dates, and NextEra representatives' availability, we've been able to set a date for Tuesday, November 7th at 6 p.m. for the Solar Project Town Hall meeting. If any information regarding the meeting is received, it will be posted on the town's website, the official site for any news regarding the Camelot Solar Project. Thank you. Bill, do you
I
have
have nothing.
anything?
Nothing.
Dan?
Not a Town of Rome event, but there are several residents and their children in the Town of Rome. This week is Assumption Homecoming, and on Friday, our 8th graders who are going to Washington DC to see our government are holding a brat fry at 4 p.m. up at the high school on Chestnut Street. And then if you want to see the football game, that's on Sunday at Southwood County Stadium at 11.
Jackie?
Nothing except, as always, I remind you, if you're looking for information on the town, you go to romewi.com. If you want tourism information, it's visitromewi.com. Those are your official places for town information and events.
Bob?
I have nothing.
Okay. Moving forward, department and committee reports. Any questions, comments? I know we just received the chiefs.
I just had one.
Yeah.
When I asked the question previously, I was told that our Public Works Director does not operate equipment out at the Syracuse, but according to your report this month, you groomed the trails at Syracuse yourself?
Yes, that helped out, yes.
Okay.
Don't recall saying that he didn't operate equipment. He has a CDL.
No, I asked if he groomed the trails at Syracuse, and you said no. Just thought I'd bring it up.
All right. I also want to note that now that the police chief, in his monthly report, now that the CSO, the Community Service Officer, has completed her her field training, she is focused on property violations to include the dead brush and timber throughout the town this fall. The assigned CSO officer and supervisor will be involved also in the short-term rental process. The administrator has been conducting training with both officers for the transition and completing these duties after her departure. Is there anything else anybody wanted to ask or have questions about the reports?
I guess just to piggyback on that, since we just got this, to congratulate the police department. They had a successful year with no serious injuries or fatalities reported on the lakes. So I think the Safely program and having the officers on the lakes hopefully contributed to that, or people are just being more careful. So congratulations on a successful season on the lakes.
I'd also like to piggyback on that comment and say thank you to both Visit Rome, Sergeant Jason, and the CSO Jasmine Aldrich for their efforts on the Rome Safely program and the number of citations that are up on the lakes, keeping them safe, which probably added to no serious accidents. So thank you, everybody, for those efforts. Okay, moving forward. Discussion and possible action on the following items following Robert's Rules of Order. Number 9, discussion and action, approval of the September 7, 2023 meeting minutes.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel and a second by Supervisor Minter for the approval of the September 7th, 2023 meeting minutes. Any discussion?
Yes. Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to note that the minutes correctly reflect the fact that I had asked for an agenda item to fill the 2 vacancies because of its utmost importance, and that the chairman had responded saying that the Administrator Gilbert this afternoon, that they had met and they are working on a plan that this will be discussed at the next meeting, which is tonight.
That is not accurate. That is not accurate.
As I recall, that's accurate.
We have been working on a transition plan between the administrator and the town attorney, and that's been presented to all board members, and that's been followed through for discussion.
And I believe we discussed the hybrid plan for running the zoning department on
did.
a short interim basis last meeting. And I believe we approved some things.
And nobody else spoke up when you said anything last week. So I don't understand why you're suggesting that it was any different.
Well, one can agree with one plan and certainly want to have the other one filled.
Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second for approval of the meeting minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe there's an issue here, Mr. Supervisor Bauer Height. Unfortunately, the room's full tonight, but I'm gonna just say it here and now. It's interesting how much you've spoken up since April. Is the issue with me as your chair?
No, the issue is filling a vacancy that we sorely need filled.
Well, okay, we'll discuss that later in the
That's
evening
what I
then.
thought.
It- Number 10, discussion and action, checks, vouchers, receipts, and journal entries. Approved checks, number 45598-45720, totaling $1,640,964.79. Auto payments totaling $62,531.86. State Social Security Medicare withholding totals $37,027.70. Payroll vouchers V20893-V21014 totaling $100,799.05, and checks 21663-21664 totaling $295.25. Receipts number 24934-25006 totaling $1,727,388.97.
Move to approve the checks, vouchers, receipts, and journal entries as listed.
A second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Minter, a second by Supervisor Cole for the approval of the checks, vouchers, receipts, and journal entries as presented. Any discussion?
I have a question. We show we're 73.77% through our budget.
That's with TIF included. If you take TIF out, it's about 63%.
Okay, so we're okay.
We're fine. But I print all funds on the one that comes in your packet, so.
Jamie, you said that's with TIF included?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's also with ARPA, with any of our special funds that are
ARPA.
that are kept outside of general, because it's all funds.
So ARPA also. Thank you. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 11, discussion and possible action. Review of the Town of Rome's investment portfolio with Tammy. Oh, please excuse me.
No, do not apologize. It's
Can you say it
Oshetsky,
for-
but It's Oshetsky.
Okay, of Ellers Public Finance Advisors. Welcome.
Now it is. Okay, thank you so much for your time tonight. I did provide a packet of information for you. Usually, once a year, we try to be available to provide you a summary of what's going on with your investment portfolio. So as a reminder, you probably see Greg from my company a number of times throughout the year, but we also handle your investment component of your general funds. So our goal ultimately is from a comprehensive standpoint to make sure that you have funds necessary for operational or project needs. The portfolio is designed based upon statutory limitations. So under state statutes, you actually have some limitations on the investment vehicles that are available to you. Very exciting stuff. Very often we'll see CDs, treasuries, agencies. Occasionally you'll have some municipal bonds. You can buy corporate debt, but we traditionally are a little bit more conservative in your portfolio. Now, just as an overview of our services, I did include, I know that oftentimes with transition of boards, if there's any new members, if you haven't seen me in the past, I like to make sure that you're fully aware of some of the things that Ellers provides to the town. So, as I mentioned, Greg Johnson and I work together to make sure from a comprehensive standpoint, we have a full understanding of the town's activities as well as, financial position. So, I did include just a couple of slides in here for that, but I don't need to necessarily go through them in full detail. I also think it's extremely important that as a group, you are fully aware of what's going on from an economic standpoint. So one of the things that we will work with your finance team on is making decisions on reinvestment strategies as well as investment vehicles that may or may not be the most advantageous at any given time. So from an economic standpoint, in fact, yesterday, the Federal Open Market Committee had a meeting. The Fed funds rate is oftentimes one of the metrics that we will monitor. And the reason for that short-term interest rate actually will have some downstream impact on the investment vehicles available to you. So yesterday, the rate has remained unchanged. The rate has increased dramatically in the last year. So that is a little bit of an anomaly, I would say, from a long-range investment planning standpoint. However, it has benefited you on the short-term cash standpoint. And as we have reinvestment opportunities, we are able to provide you some predictable income from a budgetary standpoint and for planning for projects. So from an economic standpoint, some of this data it's from last week. It hasn't changed too dramatically, but just know most short-term rates are well over 5%. The 10-year treasury is hovering just around 4.5%, and your municipal portfolio typically is within that 1 to 3 year average. So we're seeing some nice opportunity for you for reinvestments. We've built a strategy within the portfolio and within the parameters of your investment policy so that you have predictable income, but they're very low risk. So the idea is principal preservation is paramount to everything that we do. We oftentimes are building this strategy so that you don't necessarily feel the dramatic shifts in interest rates. The goal would be to have that predictable income and stay within a range. So I point this out because as we get into some of the actual portfolio detail, I think it's important that you see that some of the short-term cash rates are a little higher than the averages on the portfolio. That's not uncommon. The reason for that is we are buying fixed income, so we're buying them a set fee or set pricing. You're basically getting the interest along the way, and you get face value at maturity. But you also, traditionally, it's a buy and hold strategy. So we're not trading within the portfolio, liquidating and reinvesting. Oftentimes, it is buy and hold. A couple of times this last year, we did an analysis so that we can ensure if there is replacement opportunity, we would offer that or provide a recommendation to do so. One of the things that we often like to remind, especially at the board level, it sounds counterintuitive to say, yeah, why wouldn't I just sell something with a lower interest rate and replace it with a higher interest rate? But one of the components of governmental reporting is your annual audit. And if you liquidate a fixed income holding ahead of maturity, you're facing that market price fluctuation, so you actually could take a loss. So we want to make sure that from an audit perspective, you're making up that loss within the same calendar year or audit year, while also replacing it with potential income opportunity. And that's really where the limitation becomes pretty dramatic. There really weren't many opportunities within the portfolio to actually do that. So I just want to make sure that you're well aware when we are looking at that, that is a component of our services. And if we take a peek here at one of the charts that I often like to show you, if you take a look at page 6. So again, I put a lot of data in here for you, and if you're ever out in the wild and somebody asks, what are we doing with our general funds and our investments, at least you have full understanding that you're being strategic with them, you're putting them to work, and there's some economic information as well for discussion purposes. But the forward treasury rate curve. So when you are looking at this chart, one of the things that I oftentimes am looking at, especially as we start to think about reinvestments, I oftentimes get asked the question, how do I know how long to invest for, or what does it look like? And beyond just cash management and understanding your current cash position and future payments required or future projects or operational expenses, these funds are traditionally longer term. So we're looking at it from a market cycle standpoint, making sure that you're getting the most opportunity out of the yield curve. This particular chart shows it's observable market data, and oftentimes it's futures, contracts, things of that nature, where will have traders who are buying these contracts, and they're buying them based upon what they think the interest rates in the future will be. This is no guarantee of where they actually will go, but it historically has been pretty close. So this is just an example. The blue line on this page actually represents the current rate averages. The 3-month, that orange line, is actually where we expect or where traders are expecting interest rates to shift. And that gray line is approximately where we should see it in about 3 years. The reason I like to look at this is right now, short-term rates are extremely high, and they're much higher than these longer-term rates. That's not normal. So traditionally, if you're going out and getting a mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, you've got a longer term, it's more expensive than, say, a short-term loan. That's a little different than what you're seeing right now. So I always think that this is an interesting chart for your group to see, just so that you can have an idea. When we are making recommendations, we are now starting to shift them into a little bit longer maturity segments. The Fed funds rate did remain the same. So right now it's about 5.25 to 5.5. And I, of course, like to make sure that you have some employment and the economic data that drives some of that rate change. The unemployment and inflation numbers are actually looking much favorable than they were last year. We have not yet seen those interest rates at the Fed fund level come down. So over the next 12 to 24 months, we do anticipate those rates will either start to lower on the short end or even come down, so on the longer term. And then from a portfolio summary standpoint, one of the things, so Jamie and I had discussed, I think it was back in June, some of the averages that we're seeing, and looking at it now as of August 31st, we did actually see some nice shifts in those reinvestments in that interest rate. So right now your portfolio is just under $1.5 million. So it's they're pretty much long-range funds. You really don't often take money in and out of it. The goal of this portfolio is really that stability and predictable income. So when you're looking at it from an annual standpoint, we do have a couple of charts in here that will show what you expect to see for 2023 and 2024. But if you look at page 11, this just showcases for you that we actually look to limit from a cash standpoint as much as possible within the portfolio. This actually, just so you know, the negative number is not actually a bad thing. It was just a pending trade. But this really just represents that you are invested in fixed income securities. The actual portfolio value does not dramatically fluctuate throughout the year. And from a actual gain or loss, the portfolio has about a $10,000 gain as of August 31st. Again, you're a buy and hold strategy investor, so oftentimes we don't see a lot of gains unless we're purchasing something at a discount. But the goal of this is really that gain also factors into your overall income for the year. The income received at that point was just over $17,000. So annually, we expect to see between $20,000 and $40,000 within a portfolio of this size. So that's ultimately what our target would be. Now, if you take a peek over at page 12, this is also a summary. It shows a little bit of information from a maturity standpoint, some of those averages. So right now, the portfolio has been pretty short. We actually, in a rising interest rate environment, look to keep things predictable, but also have some liquidity so that as reinvestments come up, you can take advantage of those interest rate shifts. Right now, it's a little under 2 years. So as the next couple of maturities come up, we may start to recommend going out a little bit longer on the back end of this portfolio, just so that you've got some longevity and predictability with that income. Taking a look at page 13, one of the things that we focus on is making sure that you have a diversified portfolio of fixed income securities, so that as markets fluctuate or change, you have the opportunity, if you needed to liquidate for any reason, you can look across your portfolio and determine which particular investment type or vehicle would be most advantageous. It's not real common, but it does happen. So building that diversity profile is important. From an average standpoint, you'll see that the average yield is about 2.33%. As I mentioned, it does lag behind what we consider short-term or cash rates. The benefit, of course, to you is as rates do start to come down, that rate should be about that same range. Back in June, it was a little over 1.5%, so we've seen some opportunity for reinvestment that is to your benefit. From an overall total standpoint, we do showcase for you the variety of what we consider the fixed income total. So if you look at the bottom left, the par value is really that face value. So that is ultimately what you would expect to receive as these mature. That market value, that does change daily. So market value, it's really just market noise. So day to day, the portfolio value will fluctuate. That would only be a direct impact to the town if you had to liquidate investments ahead of maturity. And then there's a net gain loss, and that's actually unrealized gain loss in the portfolio because of that market fluctuation. And from an annual income standpoint, you'll see that right now it's about $36,000, just based upon current coupons. And I did include on the next 2 pages just a 2023 income summary, which is expected to be about $35,000, assuming you don't reinvest anything and you have a couple of maturities this year. And then 2024 is just under $25,000, again, assuming you don't reinvest anything. So as you have maturities in the portfolio, which are actually represented on page 16, if interest rates stay higher, we would expect to see additional income. But again, we're probably going to start recommending that you reinvest towards the end of your maturity schedule. Looking ahead, the Fed funds rate, as I mentioned, remained the same yesterday. I would say in the next 12 to 24 months, we will start to see that come down, and we will expect to see short-term interest rates also decline. I have no crystal ball, but just based upon market cycles, that's what we're expecting. And all of that just to say that we are recommending that you stay the course at this point, and we really will start to lengthen out the maturities. We also will be taking a peek at your investment policy. I believe the last time it was updated or approved was 2017, and we like to see that updated periodically. So expect that likely before the end of next year. And probably sooner, but I always say it's,
Start looking at it in the
Yep.
spring.
I think
Exactly.
it was after that, because that's when we went to Ellers for,
okay, so maybe I have an outdated version.
yeah.
Okay.
'Cause we adopted your investment policy when we went to this investment model.
Oh, okay, so maybe I just need an updated version. But regardless, that would have been 2020, so.
Yeah.
2024 would be about the appropriate cycle for that, so. And that's a lot of information, but do you have any questions or concerns that you wanted to address? And if I walk out the door and you have a burning question about treasury securities or anything unusual, don't be afraid to ask. I know, right? It's very exciting stuff, you're talking about fixed income, so I get excited about it. Not many people do.
Can you tell us what percentage or what factor, or how does this rate with, we learned the other night in the audit that we were at like a 40% or 41% over where, they recommend either between 17 and 24%.
Yep, for your general fund balances. It really is dependent upon, from an operational standpoint, anything you have coming up in the next couple of years. You guys have had a very healthy fund balance from a best practices standpoint. Traditionally, it's between that, from a rating standpoint and from a just credit quality, we often like to see about 20 to 30%, or we would recommend that. But it really is up to you and what that comfort level would be. Policy-wise, you're over your policy. So I think from a decision standpoint, it comes down to if you wanted to dedicate those dollars to something very specific. It's not so much that you can't invest them. It's really just building a little bit more strategy around how you handle those. And there are some ramifications on certain types of decisions, so I would, yeah, and that's another thing that, your finance team and Greg ultimately can also help as well, is how it would impact your levy and future plans for projects.
Because that was one statement Amber had made, that if there was some sudden change in that from like, say, the 41% down to like 25 all of a
Yep.
sudden, or this could impact our rating.
Yes, correct. And that's part of why it wouldn't necessarily be that you would want to take it completely out and just go
Right.
spend it, but allocating it or approving it to be for a specific use may not be the worst idea either. It really comes down to a balance between how that will have an impact on your overall fund and reserve balances.
Say going from 41% to 30%, which is still within the recommended range that you have for a specific purpose, would not damage or affect that that rating.
It always could, and I always.
It could.
Well, and I say it because it's not likely, but they'll ask you questions about it, so just be
Right.
comfortable and confident in the reasons behind what happened. If you suddenly went and spent a bunch of money, that would look worse than if you just allocate it to another purpose.
Well, let me ask you another question. With a fund balance of that size, for a town of this size, that's a very, very healthy fund balance.
It is very healthy, and surprisingly, especially with, factoring in a lot of the development and things going on with the community, you're in a very good position.
But if there's needs that arise that cannot be met,
That I would look to balance that between, should you take all of it at once, or should you build it into a long-range plan? And you guys from a,
long-range planning.
well, your financial management plan also is extremely important as you're making those decisions, and Greg from our company has
Right.
worked with you guys to build out strategy, because again, it isn't about just going and taking all the money and just saying, yep, we're gonna keep 30%, we're gonna do something this other portion, but make sure you have a plan and everybody's comfortable with
So
it.
that's where the long-range fiscal forecasting comes in, and we should start doing that soon. So,
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody else have any questions?
Great, thanks, guys. Thank you
you
all for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Of course.
Do we need a motion and a second to accept the investment portfolio as presented?
I move we accept the report on the investment portfolio as presented this evening.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Minter, a second by Supervisor Capel to accept the investment portfolio as presented by Ellers Public Finance Advisors. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move up the discussion for the highway and solid waste budget from item 20.
I'm gonna ask if Director Martinson can join us up at the podium. There was included in the. Oh, yes, you can. Absolutely. There was included in the packet a budget description worksheet along with a bunch of road improvement plan information and Whistler information. I would just note a couple things before we talk about the road plan. That prior year revenue that you reflect, the 77,000, that's the premium that was paid for the loan that we took last year. That pays the interest on the loan next year. There's no principal due on that loan next year, only interest. And since we got a premium pay, it was the determination, rather than put that onto levy, that we would save that. So that's that 77,000 reflected in prior year revenue. The property tax levy, you can see, took a dramatic increase. That's what we're gonna talk about tonight, and Brad has a couple options. We did keep GTA, our general transportation aid, flat. We did not see an increase this year. We do not expect to see an increase. There was one in the budget, but that was removed by the legislature. The rest of the items are fairly level or slight increases on, and does reflect the 5% placeholder for wages. And we did not, because of the focus being on road work, there is no capital items in next year's budget. I'll have Brad maybe go through a little bit about the road improvement plan.
See, on the road improvement plan, laid out a couple different options. A lot of that just depends on what funding is available, what the board would like to spend next year on projects. And I think once we have that number down, then we decide what projects we wanna do. Obviously, the Apache Avenue design, that is a go. And then replacing of the culvert on Apache next year between West and East Queensway. Estimate that right now about 75,000, we'll know more once we get a final design. just came up this week, you'll see the wedge and 2-inch overlay on Akron, on the east side of 13. Just this week, the state came up with what they're calling now an ARIP funding, which is an agricultural funding they can use on a Class B road that, will help, and then you take that road off of that posting. We'll know more on that in the spring, how that application is gonna be. But that stretch of Akron, and then also Seventh Avenue, actually, that should go north up to 73, would be eligible for that, because it is a Class B posted road right now. So I guess my suggestion on that one would be to, if board would approve, to hold off on that until we know more on what that'll look like in the spring of next year.
There was some mention of that when we were at WTA this past Monday. And they said something about you would then not be allowed to have any sort of weight restrictions on it whatsoever, correct?
Yes.
So, okay.
And,
So then the 2 inches would be okay then, right?
well, no,
I mean,
that might, what I'm proposing there for road work, might be changed, because if you apply for that funding, you probably have to, abide by Trans 204 design requirements, so it's probably actually be built up to a higher standard, which is great for the town,
Oh.
in order to accommodate the extra weight. And, just a background quick, so I
Got
don't
it.
waste too much time. The reason why this coming through is to help local municipalities take care of roads that, have agricultural farming running on that with the loaded weight that they're carrying.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
What's the split on that funding? It's not 100%. What's our portion if we would receive it?
I don't know if they mentioned that there in the meeting. They gave a very brief description, but they said they wanna get through the LRIP applications first before they start.
Okay. Cause it's, I mean, wouldn't be, it'd
It's
probably be
really
like
new.
80-20 or.
80-20, yes, probably,
Okay.
that'd be my guess. You see farther down, there's also some LRIP and some BIL funding that's gonna be coming available. Those applications are due starting October and then begin November. And then you'll see that I like to apply for possibly a couple stretches of road. And even you look down to 2025, there's a stretch, a piece of road, and then the 2026. And 27, 28, there's a couple roads that could apply for those funding opportunities. Those roads would be suitable for those projects. So even though I have those under like the 2024, those have to get moved around to get the funding.
So in the budget worksheet, there's a option 1 and an option 2. Do you just wanna talk about what's the difference between option 1 and option 2?
The option 1, option 2, I guess sometimes, compared to, say, you're buying a air filter at, Home Depot, they got a good, better, best. It depends on, once again, how much funding we have available, what the board would choose to spend on the roads. There's the best option, which would be the pulverize and pave of Akron and also of Rapids Trail. But if there isn't the funding available, we definitely wanna do some of those roads next year, then look at the wedge and overlay of those 2 stretches of road. Would be a savings.
Brad, if we did the second option, how long would that extend the life of that road versus the first option?
I have 20 years.
Okay.
And I'll just note, in those totals, under the option 1, option 2 on your budget sheet, that 421,000 for that stretch of Akron east of 13 is included in there. So if the board does want to push that off to apply for the ARIP funding, that 421 would come out of there.
For 7th.
Yes.
So this we'll bring back up our levy worksheet too when we go back through all of the budgets, but we did put the higher number, which would be the option 1 number, into the worksheet, which
Yeah.
puts you $1.4 million over budget.
And is that stretch of Akron to the east of 13 included in that levy number on the worksheet?
Yes, it is. So that would have to come up, that 420, which I think is why Jamie said we were 1.4 over, could you take that 4?
Oh, took that out already. You're jumping ahead.
Yep.
And you're seeing fuel prices go up for next year and other costs going up for next year, tire and everything else, right? So
yes,
it's unexpected and can't be helped. So something has to give, right? How about your other supplies and things like salt, sand, all
salt,
of that stuff?
we actually have an early order coming in this fall yet to fill the shed, and then the 30,000 for next year, 2024, is kind of typical what we've been doing in the past. Last year, we went through quite a bit of salt, just because of the way the winter was.
We did good for a lot of years and then used it up last year.
And one thing I always like to say with salt, the price of that is never going down. It's just money sitting in the bank, sitting over there. It's only gonna go up.
What about, I do have a question regarding, with using more and more mastic, are we allowing more for our workers to have the supplies that they need, that they're going through? As far as uniform and proper clothing, have we budgeted more to allow for the proper clothing?
The employees do get a uniform allowance, $350 per employee. Plus, you will see that in my budget, there is the, safety.
Do you think we need to raise that up too, because of the additional mastic work and how that eats through shoes and gloves and?
If that was a determination, it would have to get changed in policy, because I believe the $300 amount is in policy. So we'd have to, if we changed it in budget, we'd have to bring back a policy.
It's in a policy,
It's in our personnel policy.
and that's probably being looked at right now in the HR audit as part of the policies, employee policies, okay.
I don't know that Van Briesen would look at the dollar amount per se. They're probably more looking as a, does it meet the legal guidance and that we have one? But they probably would look for us if we wanted to make a dollar amount change. And yeah, you said 350, yes, yeah.
So then we're at the max amount that we can offer due to policy.
No, you're not at the max amount. I'm just saying you'd have to bring back also a policy change. Would have to be adjusted in the personnel
If you're making an
policy.
increase, you gotta change the policy.
That's
That's all
just-
it is. Just Brad, you have annual fire extinguisher maintenance for this year, but then you took it out for next year. Do we not need to annually look at our vehicle extinguishers?
I think we moved that to fire, didn't we?
It's either in fire or building and grounds.
Every May,
Yeah,
we collect all our fire extinguishers, and then they're inspected and reviewed.
so we would still intend to do that. It's probably just reflected in the buildings and grounds budget instead of this one budget.
Because most of the extinguishers are out of buildings.
Does the fire department do that?
We contract out with a service. I mean, the
Service and
fire
they come and
department doesn't.
look through them all and
Yeah,
recharge those that need recharging?
yeah.
Okay.
It's always like the first Saturday in May, because we have it as a community event. The fire department does the facilitation of it, but it's a
Training.
company that
Okay.
comes in.
So how would we go about changing the policy so we could allow more for for shoes and that when they're working specifically with mastic?
I think it would be hard if you assigned the piece about it had to be specifically with mastic. If you wanted to increase it, I think you would just increase it and we would bring that back as a policy change. It would also influence water utility, would have to increase theirs too, because they're listed in the same section of the policy.
Brett, of the two roads that you've got two options on, option one and option two, Akron and Rapids Trail, if you know which of those two roads has the most traffic on it and is used most by people living here or people coming to town? So I'm thinking like Akron goes to the Trap Shooters Association, so people coming in for annual shoots and events travel on that road. So that's kind of, in some ways, to me, symbolic of our town, if that road is the way it's looking right now, which I don't know how many people travel on that road, but it's not in very good shape, versus Rapids Trail. And I generally know where Rapids Trail is, but I can't say I use that very often. Is that the one that kind of goes around the lake,
North side of Arrowhead.
north side of Arrowhead? So I guess if you had to choose one over the other, if we put you in that position, not holding you to it, which one do you think would be, if you're gonna pick option one on one and not on the other?
I'd say Akron, because if we have another winter like last winter, Akron's gonna be in very tough shape.
I think Akron's gonna look like Apache was this year,
Yes, exactly.
if not, if something's not done to it.
And if
Okay.
you live on Rapids Trail and you walk that and you bike it and you have dogs that you walk on it, how do you explain that to the residents that live there? Cause that's a heavily densely populated area.
But we're not saying not do it at all. I'm just looking at whether to pulverize or just do the
Right.
overlay,
Right, I understand.
so.
Just wanna
Just
be
trying to
conscious
think
of
it
all
through.
options.
Because something's got to give. We can't
Oh, absolutely.
approve all of this. So.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Our
So I'm
net-
just trying
Yeah,
to.
you're right, Jackie. Our net new increase only allows us $149,000 with a $3,000, with 3,000 people. You have to go to referendum to increase the levy, right?
And I know I brought this up before, and I hate to beat this drum again, but these are heavy-duty capital projects when we're rebuilding roads to the tune of $2 million, well, $1.5 million roughly. I don't know that we should be paying cash for building these roads. I think we could budget for the borrowing again, much like we did with the Apache project. I know that came up in the middle of the budget, after the budget was done. I would rather see us use levy dollars to figure out a plan to borrow this money for those big projects. And then you have a little bit of levy every year for the next 10 years, for example. Rather than, you know, if we took this whole thing, $2.3 million worth of levy going to roads, that's 2/3 of what we have available to spend. We have nothing left for parks, nothing left, we'd have to slash everything, basically, in order to pay for cash. These projects need to get done, you know, there's no doubt that our road projects need to get done, but I don't believe that using levy cash for 100% of the project is the right way to do it. It's better, in my mind, to spread it out. It's still gonna cost us more because we have to pay interest on the money, but that's a lot better than trying to explain why we're chopping just about every other service in the town.
You can't predict what the net new growth will be next year.
Your borrow in highway right now, again, we aren't paying principal on the current loan that we took next year, and we're taking that premium to help offset that cost, but just your borrowing expenses, your principal and interest in highway next year is $145,700. So I'm not disagreeing, the project will last us 20 years, it makes sense to spread out that cost, but you also just wanna weigh in the factor of, you usually have around $400,000 that you spend on road improvement, you have to take that, what you're paying on that loan out. So then you're maybe taking $300,000 out of your levy annually and paying off your loan.
That's a lot better than taking 2.3 million out of the levy.
That's right.
Well, again, you would be,
It doesn't allow for the growth of the other maintenance items that we've been talking about. The seal coating and the crack filling.
Say this again?
I said if we do all of the main improvements, it takes away from the other short-term improvements that also affect the longevity of the roadway system, the crack filling, the seal coating. We were looking at trying to get a well-rounded program built. He's got some seal coating in here for next year, he's got a little bit of crack. Did you have crack filling? I wasn't sure. But you had one road to be seal coated, I believe.
Yes, Leisure Lane.
And we need to start looking at that overall maintenance program,
Correct.
not just replacing roads. So something's gonna have to give. You're gonna have to make I believe you're gonna have to make a decision on one or the other. I don't think we can do them both.
I see what Supervisor Minter is saying. You're leveraging what you have to extend the monies and take care of something that hasn't been taken care of. not saying anything against Brett, I'm just saying it hasn't been a priority over a long period of time. So that's the decision that has to be made.
And Brad, looking at this, this is suggesting the pulverizing of these two roads, Akron and Rapids Trail, and then I'm looking at 2025 and going forward. There aren't any major projects like that, so you're not foreseeing any other roads in 25 that are going to have to be pulverized and totally replaced. It's pretty much these two, and then we're just working on maintenance for the rest of them to extend their life, or
No.
is that kind of dreaming that I'm thinking that way?
Oh, you'll still see in 2025, there is hopefully we're doing the Apache Avenue from 10th Avenue to State Joint Highway 13 at 1.5 miles with that pedestrian trail.
A resurface, but not pulverize and replace, right?
No
Is
problem,
that-
that's actually,
Is that the same thing? Am I
It's gonna
just,
be rebuilt.
okay, well, that's just my ignorance of the language, sorry
yeah,
about
no,
that.
no, that's, 'cause
Okay.
that was the original plan, but now we're adding the pedestrian trail, that's gonna be a much more major project than that. And then they get the 1.73 miles for Archer.
Okay, so there are others coming up?
Yes, and I will say, it's a 5-year plan, but you really gotta look at almost 1 to 2 years, because what you don't do next year, are you lumped in 2025,
Exactly.
2026?
Yep.
And it'll be much easier in the future for me to set up a more consistent plan if I know exactly what we're gonna be budgeting from year to year. It's kind of, are we budgeting for 1.8 million or 400,000?
Right.
It's tough to put a consistent plan 5 years out together if we don't know.
Sounds like my husband managing my spending and kind of, you know. No, just to add a little levity here.
No trip down the Amazon this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay, so,
I do have a question for
You
Brett,
did.
and not, I mean, are you basing, I'm just asking, I know Longbow is in Moat, I've seen them, but I haven't seen Aldridge or Eaton or Woodbridge, but I have seen like Quarterstaff, I've got pictures of Quarterstaff, and there was another one on the east side that looked really, really bad. Like if it'll even make it through the winter. Are these from recent inspections that you've done, or based on your 21 Pacer ratings? I'm just asking the
These
question.
are up to 2021.
Okay.
2023 isn't done yet.
Okay,
But we can always take those 3 roads if the board would approve to do them. And then in the spring, because we never know winter, what's gonna bring to the
Right,
roads.
right.
We can always take that total amount there for those 3 projects and move it to another one. We just need to know how much money we wanna spend.
I know Longbow and Moat I know are really bad because I've seen those, and Aldridge, again, I'm not familiar with those 3, but I do know that I've seen Quarterstaff is really, really bad, and there's another, Chatham, I think, was one of them. So we'll evaluate these again in the spring and just see how they held up throughout the winter.
Correct.
And see where the money can go. Okay. All right, thank you.
So if we pursued the borrowing idea, and we take out $715,000 for Akron, and $478,000 for Rapids Trail, and thought about borrowing that money, and then if we're going to hold off potentially on the east side because of this other grant that's coming up, it's another $421,000, what would that change the requested levy for highway, taking those projects out of there?
While she does that, when do you have to leave by, Brad? What time do you need to be out of here?
Just by 7 would be nice.
Oh, okay. We'd all like to be out of here by 7, Brad. Levity again, Brad. Everybody.
While Jamie's doing that, so we're sitting in silence. If you noticed on the highway operations under the road signpost mailboxes, I did take that from 2,500 to 7,500 because next year I would like to start replacing a lot of our stop signs, speed limit signs, basically take a
Name
quadrant.
signs?
Take a quadrant of the town and we'll work on that area and just each year keep moving around. Sorry.
No, you're fine, but, so, we have in there the 1.8 million. Really what I need to do is take the 1.8 million and subtract off those 2 projects, the 715 and the 478. So then we would be budgeting 645 $645,250. Does that sound right with the projects that
Could we please have that number again, Jamie?
would be $645,250?
You have that 421 included there for that ERP project?
No,
No, okay,
no,
not already.
no, the 421 isn't in there.
Okay.
So it's the 1.8 minus the 715 and the 478, because if we would borrow for those funds.
So then if we could, theoretically, we could leave the highway property tax at the 830,669 that it was this year.
No. Let me just put the 645 number in.
Okay.
It's gonna take your going to take your highway, oh, because you have some other stuff. I have to get my levy number back from the top. So take your highway levy down to $1,100,900, $752.94. Then we input that into our levy sheet. And you're 293,000 over.
So we're just about 4 million at this point in time if we looked at still projecting to do those two projects, but looked at borrowing to do those two big projects.
Yeah, and what I would do is if that was the intention of the board, I would reach out to Greg.
Greg,
And I would tell him that we had that intention, that borrow wouldn't happen until after the first of the year. So you'd have to have someone that would go through that borrowing process, but then he could work it into our overall plan. But
Just done
then
that with the board before?
you still would have to, cut out
93.
293, 201, and 94 cents.
Easier to cut out 200,000 than $2 million.
Yep. Nick and I'll throw in the 94 cents. We're good for it.
I'll get a buck. Just
I know, I was
just
like,
to
you
top
give
you.
a buck, yeah, we'll have it settled.
Does that sound like a good plan? I mean, it would get those two projects definitely completed next year. I'm not asking you to speak to the wisdom of borrowing the money or
He's
anything.
looking at you like, I'm not sure I wanna answer that
So
question.
he doesn't have to answer it.
Well, I like the idea of borrowing for those types of improvements because that way the people that are using the improvement are paying the freight. Otherwise, you're charging the people that are living here now, and if someone moves or comes into the community, if they come into the community, they're not paying. If they've moved, they're not paying. So,
You're using the
borrowing
tax money
for large
wisely.
capital improvements, to me, is always making sense.
Yes.
I would just want to make sure that in the future, like,
We continue to increase our debt service,
But
and
then
we have
also-
to be careful.
to pay off those loans, then that's not gonna come out of the $400,000 to $450,000.
Should not come out of the maintenance budget, it should come
Okay.
out of a debt service budget, correct?
It's in all of your
It
your
comes out
principal-
of highway debt service.
Yes, yeah. But all of your debt services are in the individual departments.
Yeah,
And we
it'll
actually
still
have,
be there.
we actually have a low debt ratio right now,
Well,
even though we took out the loan for a
But
pet
it'll continue to climb in his budget
in
if
his
we
budget.
do it every year.
So going forward, I'll have less to spend each year than on road improvement, because I'll be paying off the loan.
If the amount would remain the same, you are correct.
Okay.
What we'd have to look at going forward is, in the ideal world, we'd be able to increase the amount of levy to the road budget to cover that debt service
Right.
on an annual basis.
You'd have to, yes.
So that it does not affect, so that it doesn't affect your normal maintenance projects. you know, and your upkeep projects, and the projects designed to make the roads last longer. That would be the goal. Now, whether we can do that or not, you know, sort of like the lady from Eller said, none of us have a crystal ball on what's gonna happen, you know, with allowable growth and things like that. I know it's semi-kicking the can down the road a little ways, but I would like to believe that it's possible. You know, when I look at a lot of the other budgets that we've been looking at, we've been doing a good job with trying to hold the line on the levy spendings in all of the budgets, you know, while trying to prioritize our employees, you know, and some of the services that we need to have. So I think that it will work. Obviously, we have no guarantees that it will work. We hope that it will, and I guess we would have to just face that issue when it comes. Or if it comes to that point, a year from now or 2 years from now, and if we still have a hefty fund balance at that point in time, perhaps 1 year, we might need to use some fund balance money to offset some of that debt service money, possibly. Again, no way to know that for sure.
Sounds like a good idea for TIF closure.
Possibly, yes.
Exactly, which is where the forecasting comes in.
Possibly, yes.
What is also a good, what makes me pleased about the plan he has is that we'll get Akron done. What he has in 2025 is the rest of Archer is done. So we have our three main besides Alpine yet, which is not in bad shape, correct? Brad, you'd still say that's,
It's still very good, yes. compared
yes,
to
there's
the
still,
others.
there's a few big holes out there that maybe we need some work, but that's still in good. And then Badger would be the next one, I would think, at some point, because it's starting to show some bad wear. But we're getting there. And then, like, if we get on a regular maintenance cycle like we've been talking about at our special meeting, I think we'll get there. So, thank you. So, where do we wanna,
I'd like to hear from Greg on what the borrowing picture would look like if we went ahead with that.
I mean, you can work it into the schedule, we can, you just won't actually borrow the money till next year.
Till next
so-
year.
next,
But
But
I'd
I
s-
can-
I'd like to, I want to see what the bigger picture is
Yeah.
from him
He can put together a preliminary report.
before we finalize.
Do you want me to work in the 715 for Akron?
Yes, the two larger ones.
But
The-
what about, do we wanna work in the 421 for Rapids Trail? Because you can always take it back out if you, cause that's,
I would say, could he present both options to us, just the two projects or all three projects? Because when would we realistically know about that other grant next year, Brad?
and I apologize, not Rapids
No,
Trail.
that's
seven-
not, it's not,
seven.
that's not the one we're talking about.
What's that?
We're taking that out
Okay, that one.
until
we're
we
just
know
gonna go
whether or
after the
not we
grant.
get the grant.
Okay, so it's just the two.
It's just the two projects.
Okay, so not the 420,
The
don't include the
difference-
421 for
Again, the
seven.
difference in the longevity of the life is what, 30 years versus 20 years
Roughly, yeah, to keep up on your maintenance.
between the
yes.
two options? I say we go for the 30-year options in both cases,
Yeah.
if we're gonna borrow
I mean,
for it,
it's
and not the 20 years.
$70,000
Yes.
difference.
If you're gonna, you'd be short-sighted not to borrow the amount, to do it the right way.
So but Brad and I will update that highway maintenance number, and I will reach out to Greg. Is there any, just following back up on the other change that was mentioned about the uniforms, because that will, right, it will sway our levy request in this budget. I did plan we would have to see highway twice, that it would come back on Tuesday.
Have employees complained
Yeah.
that they don't have appropriate or adequate or long-lasting enough uniforms, that we need to improve that?
What about if we say increase it $200, which would cover a second pair of boots roughly, two for the course of the year?
You would know, if that's what you recommend, then I would agree with that.
So we're gonna go to 550.
and what about for gloves, especially with working with the mastic? Can we give more on that, or help out more with that?
Well, I mean, if it would be the additional $200 that if there,
That would cover the
He's-
work boots and because work boots are what, steel toes are what, up about 175? Yeah,
It-
one,
$100 to $300.
Is the increase,
Depends on what you like.
is the increase you put in the budget roughly the inflated number for, and getting about the same amount as we had this year
I can't find
The-
what
for mastic?
requirements allowance are for the
Oh, for the buying of
ARP.
the mastic?
Yeah.
It's inflated just to cover a cost. We do get
Yeah.
early purchase buy here in December and January.
Do we have we used up everything we had this year?
Not yet, but it will be.
But you will. So if we purchase the same amount, it's likely that we would need to use the same amount next year. If we bought more than that, we would run out. Or less, we wouldn't have enough time, we wouldn't have enough employee time to use it.
If we bought more,
Yeah. Is that correct or not?
probably yes.
Because we haven't used up today's yet, so we will use up this year's supply by the end of the year. He's put a number in there to buy an equal amount for next year with inflated price. And we should probably keep it at that.
I think we're
I
talking
wouldn't,
about
I wouldn't
uniforms.
suggest increasing it based on what I'm hearing.
She's talking uniforms, boots and gloves, and you're
I'm
talking
talking
mastic.
No, she asked mastic.
But she's saying the gloves and
The
boots
gloves
because of mastic.
Oh,
Because they're
because of
working
Yeah, yeah,
with
okay.
it,
I misunderstood.
yes. So I think we need to increase the allowance they get to replace the gloves, because when they're working with, if he's got enough in there to cover that expense.
Yeah.
So if we can allow more for that expense.
In addition to the $200 that was just proposed.
Should we allow more?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you want, so you want to go up to 250, another 250?
It's at 250 now.
It's 350 right now. Do you want- So do
It's 350 now.
you want to add another 250 on, make it
Sure.
even 6?
Okay, so again, that is also water utility, so that needs to, I can communicate that over to water utility, but they're both indicated in the same policy.
wonder if they have questions, would they like to come up?
Brad, one more question, not related to the budget, but in that whole packet of things, you had these pages here that were the rudimentary needs analysis, Town of Rome. Could you just briefly comment what this describes to us? It's this thing?
Yeah.
This chart?
How fast can I do this?
It shows how far behind we're falling.
Basically, rudimentary needs shows what you need to spend if you want to keep up with your roads between capital and maintenance expenses. But I will say, there's a lot of questions asked about using Whistler for budgeting purposes.
Yep.
I'd like everyone to take this, read through it, and then if you have questions on it, email me and ask me. I'm not in complete agreement with this, because you'll see they're saying for your first 4 years, all you're doing is crack filling and seal coating. You aren't doing any major construction projects. You aren't doing anything until year 5. And their costs, if you remember through the training, is not really a true cost to what we're gonna have in our area.
Is that going off the 2021 rating, the PACER ratings then that you're putting in, or?
This report here is yes, because the 2023s aren't in there yet, but
Maybe we can wait until we'll take a look at it and go through it, and then maybe try it for 2023 and then gauge it from there. Would that be
Yes.
reasonable?
I can
Okay.
run it again once we have the new numbers.
I appreciate the fact that you made the effort
Yes,
to
I do
include
too.
these. I
Thank
really
you
do.
very much for
I
making
haven't
that
had a
effort.
chance to analyze them, but
That's why, if you have questions, please just email me and we can, or call, we can discuss.
So you'll see highway back again on Tuesday.
yeah.
I don't know that Greg will have analysis done by then, but you'll have to see highway back. It'll be a placeholder for future.
Talk trash now?
Let's talk trash. So, solid waste.
We were done. I put it all away.
Our revenues have been staying, our user fees have been staying fairly level, so you're gonna see that those are level from, actually, we took them down a little bit based on our projected end of year. I think some of that, we've done way better on enforcement pieces, and I think that also helped with that, that's why our user fees went down, is because we're also catching people and discouraging them that should not be in the transfer site to not be in there. Then you're gonna see your 5% wage increase in wages, that's all part-time staff, that's out at the transfer site. Operations goes down because last year we purchased the vehicle out there. And your tippage did go up from the county, it goes to $72 a ton. And at a future meeting, you'll see back we'd like to extend the agreement with Baziner, that's been working very well, we own the dumpsters. They haul them down to Adams County. That's been a really good partnership. But you will see that because of that tippage fee increase, that increase in the budget. So overall, 8% increase, 15% increase in levy. Did you want to add anything to solid waste?
Brad, was there any thought of separating out cardboard yet and bundling that up separately and selling it, or is there a market for it?
Well, I understand if we would wanna do that, we have to have it contained and dry. We have to
Right.
basically build some sort of a building out there and get a compactor, so we keep it dry. It's the only way it's
Value.
marketable.
So would you be creating more of an expense than it's worth?
I move we accept the solid waste budget as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second, first by Supervisor Minter, a second by Supervisor Capel to accept the solid waste budget as presented. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Bring it back
it.
on Tuesday then.
Good job, thank you.
Do we need to call the assessor before he leaves, or is it too late?
I think the assessor is available till 6:30, is that correct?
He's leaving the office at 6:30.
Okay, we'll keep moving along here then. Number 12, discussion and possible action, approval of recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding consideration of the removal of short-term rental conditional use permits for the following properties due to 12 months of inactivity. 374 Hartford Court, 1325 Birdie Trail, 351 Bromley Way, 388 Cranbrook Court, 1378 Rapids Trail, 341 Spring Trail, 455 13th Drive, previous owner, 1343 Parr Trail, 1508 Sumac Trail, and 923 Kingsway Trail.
Madam Chairman, it's 288 Cranbrook, you had said 388, I just want to clarify. It's
Oh,
288.
yes, 288 Cranbrook Court. Thank you for the clarification.
I'll move the item.
Second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel, second by Supervisor Cole for the approval of the recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding the consideration of the removal of short-term rental conditional use permits for the properties as listed due to the 12 months of inactivity. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 13, discussion and possible action. Ordinance number 23, approval of the recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding consideration of proposed amendments to Chapter 360 zoning, Article 26, fences, walls, and hedges, 360-139, requirements for certain fence types, B, open fences, and C, solid fences.
Again, I'll move the item.
I'll second. There's a motion by Supervisor Capel, second by Chairwoman Jumati for the approval of recommendation from the Plan Commission regarding the consideration of proposed amendments to Chapter 360 zoning regarding open fences and solid fences. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just so everyone understands, this item came forward by a plan commissioner in regards to fencing requests for properties in R4, the height and the size of the fencing. That's why this is before us tonight. Thank you. Number 14, discussion and possible action, approval of the renewal, fire protection and preventive agreement with the town of Saratoga for a 10-year term. Do we want to,
This looks like, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll move the item and then I just have a comment.
all right.
A second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel, second by Supervisor Cole for the approval of renewal fire protection and preventive agreement with the town of Saratoga for a term of 10 years.
My assumption is the chief is totally on board with this.
Correct.
Okay.
It's been involved in the conversation, as has the town
And
attorney,
it looks like we've had a long-term relationship doing this, so,
at least 20 years.
okay.
believe the first agreement was for 5 years, then it was for 10 years, and now they're asking for an additional 10. Was there anything Attorney Flanagan wanted to add?
No, other than that besides the terms really being unchanged, in general, there were two things that I would just make note of that were slightly adjusted in here, just so your attention is called to those pieces. Under number 3B, there is some added language for delinquent payments. So we always had a due date, but we never really said what would happen with delinquent payments. Not that we expect to have any delinquent payments, but always good practice to put something like that in as a contingency. And then second, in section 5, under insurance and indemnification of liability, there was some inconsistent language as it was worded in the previous agreements. There was a general reference to indemnification and not having liability, but then there was also a clause when it came to fire inspections that we would assume the liability for it. All I did there was kept the fire inspection language the same and just clarified that all the other pieces would be subject to that provision that as it existed in the last one. Again, for clarity, it is not inconsistent with the prior agreement. It is clearer.
It does clarify in here too, right, reading through it, it does clarify that the town of Rome does receive fire insurance dues for their portion of, does that need to be added?
So the language for our compensation under this has completely been unchanged from what we had in previous agreements.
Correct. But it does not speak to the fire insurance dues that we receive. That doesn't have to be addressed here.
Again, we can build that in. I just took that verbatim off the previous one as
It's a
proposed.
very small amount that we receive. Next year, it's $578. We get other payment, but the piece of the fire insurance dues is a very small.
I'm just bringing it to people's attention that we do receive we receive that compensation from Saratoga, that we get a portion of their insurance dues.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any more discussion? So we had a motion and a second. Any more questions? All those in favor? Oh, I'm
Madam Chair,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. So one thing that is important to note. So the current agreement goes until the end of the month. And just for full disclosure and discussion, the Saratoga's meeting will not happen until the first Wednesday of October. You'll see this agreement is drafted to be effective October 1st, which does not cause a lapse. If you might be willing to, both the motion and the second, to continue to provide services as they exist under our current agreement until such time as Saratoga would approve this, that would just prevent any kind of lapse potential. I apologize for interrupting, but
No, that's fine.
thinking about that
Yeah.
gap there, it may be good practice just to build that into your motion to ensure that there is no lapse in coverage for them.
Say
I would
so.
approve the agreement to include no lapsing service.
Amend a second.
Okay, so the motion and second has been amended to avoid a lapse in service. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15, discussion and possible action. Review with Tony Robley of Associated Appraisal of market update revaluation process contracted in 2021, providing an update of findings, discussions with taxpayers and scheduled appointments to date, changes expected that will be necessary to perfect the assessment role, and number of discussions not resulting in changes that may potentially turn into formal hearings, requests for Board of Review.
Hello, this is Tony speaking.
Hi, Tony. It's Jamie in the town of Rome, where I'm.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. With the town board, and we have a good attendance tonight at the meeting. The chairwoman,
I expect you would.
the chairwoman has read the agenda item. I believe Melissa sent you the agenda just so you could see that agenda item. So we would just be looking for your input on those items.
Okay, Did I dig through that? I might have not dig through that. What was my input needed on?
So the piece about our agreement for the market update, what that meant, providing an update of your findings, discussions with taxpayers, number of scheduled appointments for open book, expected changes necessary to perfect the assessment role, and what you're looking to potentially see for board of review.
So that was the answer to the questions I provided the other day.
Which was
Potentially.
in the town board packet, but maybe you just want to speak more broadly to those items?
Okay. Well, what we've seen is, particularly the last couple of years, an explosion in the sales. When I talked to the DOR this year, and they said they were adding 32% for an economic adjustment in the residential class, I thought, holy cow, I've never seen anything like that. And, but after looking at some ratios, I guess I found that the number isn't very far off. We look at our median and aggregate ratios, and particularly in the residential class, we get down to around 0.52. When you're at a ratio like that, it means in order to get the 100%, the assessments are going to nearly double. And overall, that's about what we've seen around, and the overall average was around 90%. Some were up more, some weren't up as much. Obviously, that's going to have an effect, as you guys are well aware, on the tax rate. Tax rate is going to be dropping quite significantly. And I don't know if you have all the details on that yet. I know you were working on a budget, but I guess you won't know everything until you know our final numbers. What we're expecting as far as the open book, well, we, as you might expect, have had a lot of calls, but there are 7,000 parcels there. I think as of right now, we have mostly 5 lists full for Monday for walk-in, or for in-person. And we're running 4 appointments an hour. So if it's 10 to 6, so we got about 9.5 hours of time there. So in each schedule is going to be about 38 people times 5. So that's looking at 100 and, wait, no, we're only here 8 hours. We're only here 7.5 hours. Excuse me, 7.5. No, we're from 10 to 6. It is 9.5. Well, we got a half hour off for lunch, so 9.5 hours times 4 is a 38 times 5. We're at about 190 in-person appointments, and we have
190?
around that over the phone right now. The last day or two, I think the phone has been outpacing. People wanting phone appointments has been outpacing the in-person requests. There was the question was asked, as far as the changes. Well, that's going to be based on what sort of evidence we see presented. Just because somebody went up so much, we can't really make a change for that. That's an argument that we're going to hear, and we're going to hear the argument that why did I go up more than the average, or we have sales, that went up 40 and 50%, and we have sales that went up over 200% over the assessed value. So there was a wide variety in what the sales were showing us. And when we do a reval, we kind of start over. The slate was clean. You know, we don't, our goal is not to just raise everybody the same. If sales showed that everybody went up the same, that's what we would do, but sales don't show that. As far as the board of review, it's too early to tell. I would expect, if you had asked me, I would expect 10 to 20 would be my best guess when everything is all set up.
Okay.
It might be more. Sometimes we get in municipalities where, and it might be a little easier to do this now, where we have people kind of get the troops excited, you know, get them riled up, and then in that case, you know, we can get more people at Open Book and Board Review, and it's probably easier to do right now with all the communication, easier with Facebook, etc. It's not easier to get your neighbors interested in pursuing things.
Okay, Tony.
So
Oh, sorry, Tony.
people would you know, like send out letters to your neighbors saying, you know, come down and create a stir. But we don't know exactly. But like I said, my best guess would be 10 to 20.
We have some questions from the town board.
If I understand what you said correctly, you have available 190 appointments. There's still some available if people want to.
Well, I'd say we have scheduled about 190 right now.
You do have a schedule for, okay.
And we're gonna, between now and, we got one more day between Monday. Well, I'm sure we'll have some more tomorrow. So, we'll more than likely get over 200 for
Okay.
person. You know, we're gonna have 10 assessors there, plus a greeter. So, as long as there's not a tremendous amount of walk-ins, we should be able to keep up reasonably well. If there's a lot of walk-ins, well, then there's going to be some people are going to wait some. We specifically put on we tried to emphasize by appointment because it's, you know, people don't want to wait, and you know, we're bringing our staff based on the number of appointments we have. So.
Okay. Well, Tony, I just have one question for you, and I think you've covered pretty much what we're hoping to hear, what the expectations were for the days ahead. We saw a big change, and you put in a memo here. In 2020, the assessment ratio was at 90.81. Then in 2021, it dropped to 71.81. Then in 2022, it dropped to 52.04. So overall, the average for that 3-year period comes out to 71.55. What would be the major contributing factor to that assessment ratio dropping that drastically in that 3-year period?
Well, I guess Rome has become a very desirable place
Well,
people want to go to. You know, that's, I guess, the short answer.
well,
You know,
okay.
has Sand Valley had an impact on it? It very likely could.
Well, is it the sale of the homes, the price of the homes,
We
the
could do-
improvement on the
we could
homes
do a
that are already
questionnaire.
existing?
Go ahead.
Is it the sale of the homes, the price of the homes, new builds, the improvement to
Well,
the
yeah,
existing
no,
homes,
it's
all of the
sale
above?
homes that has driven that ratio,
Okay,
that has changed that ratio.
Okay.
That's all based on sales of homes. Essentially,
Sale-
that's telling you, back in 21, properties were assessed at about 90% of what they were selling for. In 22, they were assessed at about 70, what did you said, 71, I believe?
21, 71, 81, but I think we pretty much, but we appreciate your time. I think, does the board have any more questions?
One more
Jack,
question.
Supervisor Cole?
Can you tell people what would be the best thing they can bring to those appointments if they did want to have their assessment reconsidered?
Good
What
question.
should they bring? What would be the most important information they could have for you to change the assessment?
Well, when people come to the open book, good information is always, first of all, is there an issue with the house or the property? That's always something we want to know. You know, maybe there's exceptions we have to make for condition of the house or the property itself. Certainly, they can look at their neighbors, if the neighbors have similar properties, and ask us to compare to their neighbors and see how they sit. And we're not, at that point, we're not interested in which neighbor went up more, because with assessments, it's, if you look at it as a kind of a trip, we don't really care where they start from or how long the journey is. We want to just make sure where they are is the correct spot. That's really all we're after. So whether they went up, I know what people are concerned about it, but we can't take into consideration whether they went up 50% or 100%. We need to know where should their assessment be. And a couple people have brought in, I've been given some appraisals. That's certainly, information they could bring. But generally, I think the best things is if there is an issue with the property and just a comparison with neighboring properties that are fairly similar to yours.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. Well, Tony, thank you.
I know this increase was big, and I've never seen anything like this in 30 years where the values have changed so dramatically in a 2 to 3 year period. It has been off the charts, how things have jumped, and it's going to make it hard for us and hard for the town board too, as you have to essentially be the jury in a board review situation. But hopefully we'll be able to provide information to the property owners at the open book that will make them feel a little more comfortable. I mean, the big thing is so many people think that their taxes are going to, double because they have assessment double. But unfortunately, we've tried to provide that letter. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't read the letter, and so we've had some anger because of that. We're driving them out of their homes. Well, that's not our goal. I mean, the bottom line is the total amount of taxes collected is going to be the same whether this was done or not. Just how it's distributed is going to be a little different. So.
Well, the taxes, again, are based on the mill rate. So if the mill rate goes down, it essentially impacts the amount that people pay. So even though the assessment ratio went up, if the mill rate goes down, it could impact your taxes and they would be less. But it all depends on what the actual assessment ratio was. So depending on the percentage that it went up, that'll determine, correct, Tony, if someone pays more or not.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we use 90% as a baseline as far as a change, so.
Can you explain that, please, so people,
If somebody went up above
very
that,
quickly
their
for us?
taxes are going to be probably, the only thing different would be extra budgetary needs from last year to this year.
Right.
If they actually went up less than that, they could, even though their assessment, that they could certainly see a reduction in their taxes. If they went up more than the 90%, yes, their taxes are going to go up. But you can't look at it if somebody went up 90, if the average is 90 and they went up like 130, that doesn't mean their taxes are going to be up 40%, because the tax rate is going to be down.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time this evening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. We will probably see some of you on Monday, or certainly.
Yeah, I think Melissa and I are gonna make coffee and we'll bring some cookies.
All right.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you again. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Item number 16, discussion and possible action, resolution number 23, approval of the recommendation from Parks and Rec Committee on the authorizing of resolution for cost share grant application submission to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for the upland restoration at Walden Park. You have some explanation here as far as, but we'll need a motion and a second first.
Move to approve the resolution recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee for application of the cost share grant to fund upland restoration at Walden Park.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Minter, a second by Supervisor Cole for the approval of resolution number 23 for the approval of the recommendation from the Parks and Rec Committee for the authorization resolution of a cost share grant application submission to the DNR for an upland restoration at Walden Park. Can we just hear a little bit about what exactly you're restoring and with what?
This is
Oh,
the,
Fred, oh,
Dave is here. We've
Or
been
Dave,
working
I'm
with
sorry.
Dave for a couple months on this, actually. And the proposal is to provide plantings at Walden by 9th Avenue, which is going to be in conjunction with the kayak launch that we've already placed there. And these plantings are meant to be a demonstration of what we can do to restore shoreline and prevent erosion. But Dave has got much more information. The grant that he's asking the DNR for is $36,118.03.
Yes, one of the things I want to do is not only do a restoration of this hillside to establish a buffer, get some filtering, but we want this design to be a showcase. So we're really looking at still including trail down to the kayak launch at the site. We're looking at applying to Visit Rome for the 25% match that the DNR grant will need so that we can get by with virtually no financial obligation to the town.
What type of plantings are you gonna put in there?
What we want to do to ensure really good success is there's a new product by a native nursery called Agricol, and it's called a vegetative mat. And essentially, it's kind of like you would roll down sod turf for your lawn. Only this is a mat that's planted with a variety of native plants, grasses, flowers, forbs. Then actually, they started at the nursery, let it grow to about 6 or 8 inches high. Then they cut it, and then roll it into rolls that are like about 150 pounds a piece. So it's not an inexpensive product. It's about 187 rolls, I believe, that are going to cost about $50 a square yard. So that's the major cost of this project. In order to ensure success, though, we're also budgeting to put in a sandpoint well, a sprinkling system, and running electricity to the site, which will just be used for about a 3-year startup period. Also, we're including an interpretive sign to recognize all the partners involved and to showcase this again as a buffer site that we should encourage our lakefront owners to adopt. Questions?
If you did not receive a grant from Visit Rome, what are your other grant sources? Because I assume you would need that 25% that you, to
We will
proceed
have
with
to
the
dig-
project. Would
we'll
that
have to
be
dig
something
further into that.
Tri-Lakes could help you with, or is that not under their purview because it's a shoreland?
There are some other
erosion
options.
issue?
We haven't really taken a deep dive into that yet, because we did a preliminary application that was due about a week and a half ago, and then the final application is actually due November 15th, but we want to get this resolution passed now because of the timing of when the town board meets. And then also, we want to include this adoption of this authorizing resolution with the Visit Rome permit to kind of boost that application for funds a little bit, give it a little better score, so to speak. And their grant cycle ends October 15th, so we will know before the DNR grant is even finally submitted whether we have money from Visit Rome or whether to go out and seek other sources. And I also want to mention that we're not going to Visit Rome for a whole 25% because we've got about $1,500 or more in that can be applied toward that 25% share as volunteer labor. So it's not all cash outlay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I'd just like to say I like the fact that we're looking at restoring native plantings on these shorelines and on the hillsides. I think that is the most sustainable way to protect our waterfront along with some other options, but I like native plants.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17, discussion and possible action. Approval of recommendation from the Parks and Rec Committee regarding a public property memorial placement, park bench in memory of Thomas C. Krizan in the Rome Town Center. Need a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Supervisor Cole, second by Supervisor Bauerheight for the approval of a recommendation from the Parks and Rec Committee regarding the public property memorial placement of a park bench in memory of Thomas C. Krizan in the RTC. Discussion?
I just asked, so are benches all the same? Because there's
Yes,
been
we-
other benches, there's
we
a
pretty much-
standard for what
We
bench is
pretty much
used?
standardize on that bench. It's, except,
Oh, who the person is that is in memory of?
He's not getting a bench. His family has asked if they could purchase a bench and give it to the town.
That's what we wanted to do.
The family is taking up this entire cost and, yes, including shipping. So we did put a policy in place, so if there's anyone else that would like to provide a bench to the town, they would fill out a form and they turn it in, and then we work with the same company, so all the benches look the same.
Yep.
Larry Halverson currently has a memorial bench in Rome Town Center, and it will be from the same company.
Okay, that was my
There's a
question, just so it's
form.
not haphazard benches and.
Yes, yep.
And how many, do you have a maximum number of benches that you're allowed? So, because, it's
No,
a
not at this time.
population.
Yeah, we do not have a maximum.
Plenty of room.
Plenty of room for
yeah,
benches.
Yes.
we're not gonna have a problem with that,
We'll
because
accept all donations.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, but hang on. I mean, she's got a good point. At some point, that'll need to be discussed with. But I
Well-
mean, you don't want these all over the place either.
if we get to
but-
that point, then we could restrict it to something else.
Yeah, exactly. So are you allowing this family to place this where they would like to place
It's
it?
gonna be placed at the band show.
And we'll place it will come through the winter, so it will, with the family, we will find a mutually agreeable place.
Where at the band show? Out on the Great Lawn?
No, it's
behind?
probably in the pavilion area, the north area by the fireplace.
Okay. What's it, gazebo or bench?
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 18, discussion and possible action, approval of 14 urban nuisance deer hunting permits. 40. Or, what did I say, 30?
You said 14.
Oh, 40. Sorry, these are new. Urban nuisance deer hunting permits per Wisconsin DNR recommendation to be distributed through the Urban Deer Hunting Group.
Madam Chair, I would ask if we could have discussion prior to a motion on this item.
On this item, we will move the rules aside and allow discussion to take place first. Thank you.
So I included in the packet, the information should look familiar. It was asked to be returned to this agenda, so it is the items that I had previously presented. Brief recap, Working with the DNR biologist, she recommends 40 permits. That's based on the approximate area that we have in correlation with other urban hunting permits that have been granted to the same entity. Dan Hobbs is joining us here tonight. He is in charge of the Central Wisconsin Urban Deer Hunting Club, and Rich LeCount is also here. He would be our captain for this area. There would be a slight change to the brochure that was put in the packet, because I believe Dan would want to be in charge of both hunters that would be interested and property owners that would be interested. They would be reaching out to Dan. But other than that, the information, the permit from the DNR is the same that was in your previous packet, as was my memo noting the fiscal impact. Again, the group is paid $25 per deer, and with 40 permits, this would be a fiscal impact of $1,000.
Plus disposal,
So we would
if they
take,
don't take the carcass.
if we don't have a individual that would wanna take the deer for processing, again, we might explore an option if they could be utilized through not a zoo, but the big cats or another entity,
But if they have chronic wasting disease, then that's ruled out, correct?
then it is ruled out.
So if
They-
all
and they-
40 have chronic wasting disease, we're on the hook for,
But then they're not, how does that work, then they're not processed?
They're not processed.
Yeah,
are they destroyed, or do we pay for the destruction? What happens?
Can you come up to the podium, please, Dan? Thank you. So everybody can hear you.
So the way that, this has been, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Dan Hobbs. The name of the group is actually Multi-Metro Deer Management. It's been 17 years. We do this in Wisconsin Rapids, Port Edwards, Buren, and Grand Rapids. We've also done programs in Door County. And then years ago, I helped the city of Wapaka set up their program. We're volunteers. We don't get paid to do this. The $25 is a reimbursement. And so we have to show that we spent money to get the reimbursement. Program has been, again, 17 years, so it's worked out well everywhere that we've been. As to the deer, generally what we do, when I harvest a deer, I have people that every year I give a deer to. Some of them are old people, some of them are poor people. Some of the older people, I take them to a deer processing place, is what I do, and then they go pick up the deer, pay for the processing, and it's done, it's taken care of. As the chronic wasting disease thing, we have not ran into that yet, so I don't think that there's anything disposal costs that are associated with that. If you want to have your deer tested, you can. That would be up to, the either us or the individual. We are required in Rapids and the other communities, we're required to donate the heads for testing, because they don't get enough. We're basically the only ones that are allowing testing to go on, so.
According to our permit application, it says all deer must be tested for chronic wasting disease.
And the DNR gal, she wasn't sure when we had the discussions whether that was gonna happen. So then what happens is then we have to take the head and give the DNR the head so that they can test for chronic wasting. It usually takes 10 days, 2 weeks to get that back.
and they can be in, Wisconsin Rapids is allowing us to use their
To
cooler.
storage.
So we would have a place to store. We are taking requests as part of the flyer for individuals in town that would like a deer, and we're asking them if they can process it themselves or would need processing.
Yeah.
And again, just to verify, it's multi-metro deer hunting,
Multi-Metro Deer Management.
deer management.
That was the name that the DNR guy came up with 17 years ago, so it's a
Thank you.
mouthful, but.
And the chief's also here too, in case anybody has any question, but one of the things that held the group back last time was the expansion of the original area that was discussed. Because there was a high concentrated area in neighborhoods where deer were being fed and congregating. And we all know deer wander. They can travel long distances in just a day. So the area had expanded, so that was a big concern with
Yeah.
with some people last time.
We didn't-
And then also that it was on town hunting properties, so, and I know you may not be able to speak to that, but,
Yeah, we don't set those parameters.
Right.
That's up to you guys where you want us
Right.
to be.
But again, it's the mixture between, you can't be so narrow that
Yeah.
there isn't an opportunity, if the goal is to harvest some deer, to allow land for them to be harvested from. And the group will go out and evaluate all the areas. I know there was a concern about regular hunters can't hunt on small lots, but they probably aren't going to either, because they're gonna evaluate whether or not that lot is really, could be used for hunting. And if it's not safe or too small, they're not gonna hunt there.
Yeah.
So a quarter acre lot would be considered too small or not?
But probably, yeah. Now, let me give the caveat. So if you have, let's say you've got a bunch of neighbors that are together and they've really got a deer problem, as long as you can get together and get everybody to agree to allow a guy to come in, then it's okay. But if you've got, you've got one neighbor that says, no, I don't want it, and the other neighbor says yes, there's probably not enough room there. So, and that's something we have to evaluate on a case-to-case basis. And, again, we've been doing this a long time, so we haven't had any complaints, we haven't had any problems. But we're probably a little conservative on it, and, that's one of the reasons we don't get complaints, so.
Oh, sorry, we also had some issues brought up, and the gentleman is here. He brought out some valid, points to him, about tracking, because what's the right word when you hit the deer? It's not going to drop right away, it's going to travel.
Yep.
And how do you take care of that when it's tracking into someone else's property that maybe does not allow hunting or doesn't want this happening on their land, but now a deer with an arrow in it
Yep.
is in their yard? How is that handled? We didn't understand that.
So what we've always done and what I've always done, again, you guys have more woods than Rapids does, but what we've always done is if we're in an area and we're at all afraid of that happening, I will go to the neighbor or the landowner beforehand and say, listen, we're hunting over here. I'd like to get your contact information. If something happens, we'd like to have permission to go get that deer. You do it beforehand,
Okay.
and I've never once been turned down in all the years that I've been doing this. And people appreciate you being proactive about it, because then they know who you are. You give them your contact information. They know you're not fly by night, and that's the way that it goes.
But if they would turn you down?
That's completely up to them, and that is a problem all hunters have anywhere. If the neighbor does not want you to get that deer, there's nothing you can do about it.
but that can, piggybacking on that question, that can happen with anybody that shoots a
Anyone.
deer with an arrow and you see it drop in your yard because they didn't track it properly, right?
Yeah, it can happen to anyone, and it does. Some landowners just will not allow you to go on. Again, I haven't experienced that, but I've heard of it, and so.
Because if there's no snow on the ground and you can't find a blood trail and it's walking on regular, right? I mean, if it's not snowing.
Well, that's
I mean,
not generally a problem. If
Oh,
you're-
okay,
if-
but-
If you know how to track, it's pretty
You should
easy.
be able to find it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I haven't, I've been,
I don't know, I'm not a hunter, I don't wanna
I've
kill
been doing this a
anything,
long
but
time, and it's
I
generally
don't want anything
not.
dying in the yard either, but I
Yeah.
understand it can be an issue, and that's why some people were turned off by this. And we just wanna make sure we're,
No, and I get it, and, yeah, and you're, again, you have to look at the properties where they're at, and you've gotta be smart about where you're hunting and where those deer are coming from.
bottom line is though, you ask for permission,
Yes,
you don't trespass,
right,
got it.
and it's way better to do it
Oh.
ahead of time.
And Chief, did you have input, please?
I guess I'll just clear the air a little bit.
from comments that were made at the last meeting, these guys are harvesting 40 deer and they have their program in place. What I will say, state law prohibits us from banning archery hunting anywhere in town. We used to have it where you needed a 5-acre parcel. The state has said a town can't regulate that, and that ordinance became null and void. Attorney Flanagan probably can speak more to that. But if Bob owns a parcel of land and Bob's neighbor says, hey, I'd like you to bow hunt here, without this group's involvement whatsoever, Bob could bow hunt on that parcel, long as you're 100 feet away from another dwelling when you discharge that bow. And there's nothing that can be done about that. And I believe it's 100 yards with a rifle.
Isn't there,
Or archery.
Yeah.
isn't there an acreage?
No, there's no acreage. The state law,
No, I'm talking about town of Rome.
there's no.
You cannot hunt on less than, 5 acres, is my
That's
Sir,
understanding.
just-
incorrect, sir.
Well, that's.
I'll let
that's-
Attorney
Isn't
Flanagan
it, isn't
speak
it
to
firearm
that.
versus bow?
A firearm, you cannot hunt on less than 5 acres, but the
Okay.
state of Wisconsin nullified our ordinance and said you cannot restrict bow hunting or archery hunting in any municipality tighter than those parameters that are set in the Wisconsin hunting manual.
Okay.
That's given out, so.
No, that wasn't, that, my
So
understanding
people in a
was,
residential neighborhood can shoot deer if they're within, if I have permission from my 3 neighbors, I have the area that I would need to be able to shoot deer in my residential subdivision without these folks.
okay.
It's called Act 71, and if you, what the law actually
Folks.
says is that you can limit archery.
Come up to the microphone so we can hear, sorry.
What the law actually says is you can limit archery hunting up to the 100-foot or 100-yard rule. If you do not have anything there, then it is, pretty much you can, you gotta follow it. But it's, Act 71, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct, and we're following that guideline that was set.
That was 10 years ago, 8?
Something like that, but before, you're correct, it said you needed 5 acres to archery hunt.
And that's what I was, cause that's what I understood. In this township, we had to have 5 acres, so.
Yeah.
No, Chief, I'm confused about
the 100 feet
or the 100 yards.
Let me look to make sure I was speaking, I thought that it was.
Excuse me, can we just have one person speak at a time, please, and then we'll have you come up to the
100 yards, so-
podium?
Without permission, but again, if you have your neighbor and you have 3 lots and you have permission, you likely have that 100 yards, or if you have a 1-acre lot, a larger lot in the Lake District, and the other ones on both sides of you are vacant, then there's not a dwelling on them, so that rule only comes into play. If I own a house and you own a house and there's 200 feet between and you say no hunting, then that would come into effect, but if you say, yes, I'd like to thin the herd too, and you have that distance, you can hunt regardless of these permits. So I just wanted to make that clear,
Okay.
that there's already that type of hunting that can go on, whether these gentlemen are doing it or just private people are doing it. And again, as was already stated, you certainly can't trespass to go and collect your game. You have to have permission to enter property to retrieve a deer that you would shoot.
Thank you. You have a question, Mary Jo? You want to come up to the front, please?
To the group
Could-
and tell us what you told me about why we thin the herd.
Well,
The question was why within the herd, just so
Yeah.
people at home can hear it.
there's a whole host of reasons, but, the health of the deer herd, if you have anything that's overpopulated, the deer suffer. You've got damage to flora and fauna, you've got car accidents, there's a whole host of reasons. I've got pamphlets that talk about the problems that come with overpopulation of deer. You've got, chronic wasting, that is part of that. You've got blue tongue, you've got Lyme's disease. That the islands that we hunted in Door County, the reason that we were brought in there, they had 38 cases of Lyme's disease. There was 11 houses on this private island. They had 120 deer on a 1 square mile island.
So they do swim, I know that.
Yeah, but, it was insane the amount of deer that they had there. The local hunters that were from Washington Island, they used that as their buck breeding ground. They refused to shoot does. Well,
Okay.
you have to keep the herd in check. And it's not just deer. You have to keep all wild animals in check. If there's too many raccoons, you've got problems, and it's all the same thing.
Okay.
So like that Door County area, they had absolutely zero tree regeneration. 38 Lyme's disease cases, and we've been there for 13 years, I think, harvesting deer for 13 years. And last year we had it down to, well, the problem is if you don't keep harvesting deer, they keep putting out more every year. And so it takes a while to get things in balance.
Okay.
And so,
We
All
talked
right.
at the last meeting, 3 to 5 years.
yeah.
Okay.
And sir, I'm sorry, I don't know your name with the striped shirt. You had quite a few questions last time.
Yeah,
And
some of it
were your
answered.
questions answered now? Because we had voted no to this, not because we didn't think there was a need to it, but because we didn't have enough information. We didn't understand it fully.
And we actually didn't vote
So-
no. Just
or
to
we-
clarify, we just kind of let the item die, and
Let
that's
the
why it's-
item die. And so now we have more information, so it allows a more considered vote on it. So, and thank you, everybody, for coming, because it kind of shows it's important to the community. Last time, what, 2 people?
2 people.
Came on this, so.
We need a lot more than 40 permits.
I agree.
Well, let's not get
I think
overexcited. We're just,
that was determined by biologists and DNR, so.
Yeah, but how is it gonna be determined the area? I mean, we
Okay.
live on Kingsway on an island,
We live
and
on
I
the
can go for a
peninsula.
walk.
okay, guys, we understand, and we can't have you all talking at once, but if you want to speak, please come up to the podium so you can get your name and address, but we understand there's a problem, that's why we started this. Mary Jo was the very first person I spoke to, and that's how I found out about Rich, put him in contact with Jamie, so that's how this whole thing evolved, so we know there's an issue in a concentrated area. She's been working with the DNR biologist, this is what they're giving us to start, so it's a starting point, so please, we got this up on another agenda. It's a great place to start. So if we can do that, let's get through what we can and see what happens this first year. But Tom was the other person that was here with the gentleman in the striped shirt the last time. Those were the only 2 people we heard from. So like Jackie said, thank you for showing up. And we have a board supervisor that needs to ask a question. And if Tom, if you had anything, because you were here last time as well, but let Supervisor Capel go here, please.
Do we get a report back from you at the end of the season where all 40 permits were taken?
Yes, every year we send out a community report, and then I break down, how many deer were harvested, and then break out each community, and then we also, we have to break out rural and urban deer in those other 4 communities, and so we break all of that out. All of the deer that we harvest, we have from when we started years ago in Rapids, we have an engineering map, and we actually have each location where every single deer was harvested throughout the years, and it's somewhere around 1,200 deer
Okay.
and so there's a lot of record keeping that we do. We record the amount of deer that we see every time we go hunting. We record, what deer were harvested, what shots were taken. There's a whole bunch of information that we have, and the infrastructure that's been set up. It's all there.
Okay.
So.
And then this, if we approve this tonight, we are only committing for 1 year at this point in time, even though it says it'll take 3 to 5 years to show success?
This is only a commitment for 1 year. We would have to reapply for
Right,
the
or apply
permits.
again.
This, like I noted last time, is a little bit different that the DNR is issuing us the permits. In the other communities, they issue them right to the club, but they'll have to issue them to the town, and then I would provide to the club.
I do want it is not a club.
Sorry, sorry.
So.
Retract that, it's not a club,
Well,
it's a
the reason I
hunting.
say that is because when this first started, everybody's like, well, it's a little club. No, it's not a club. So what we do is we bring in hunters. We have a proficiency test that everybody's got to
Right.
take, and then an orientation class that they've got to take a bunch of rules and regulations that they've got to adhere to. Every 2 years, we have an open shoot, and so whoever wants to come in, they can come in and join. So to guys that complain about it, it's real easy. Listen, if you want to help, then you got to take the test, and you got to do the things that we have to do.
Yes.
And
That's right, and now I recall it was Supervisor Minter and I that ran into Rich, and then he explained it to us, and then Attorney Flanagan was the one, oh yeah, we've used that up in the city of Rapids, and that's how we tracked you down, and you're
Yep.
probably regretting that at this point, but no, I'm just kidding. It'll be fine, we'll get through
Sometimes
it,
I
and
wonder
people
why I do
remember, if you know somebody that hunts, you know what the laws are now.
Yeah.
You can take them out on your own.
if you
Just-
can get a permit around here.
If you get a permit, that's
That's
right.
the other problem is that, I'm also on the CDAC committee, is that they've not given out very many doe permits for these areas. So,
Okay,
that's what Rapids is.
but Supervisor Minter, you had a question yet?
Well, question and a comment. So, a year or so ago when we started this, it was because we were concerned about the population of the deer on the peninsula and around Sherwood and Camelot. Then the DNR, and I'll just flat out state it, and I don't care how snarky this sounds, the DNR stuck their big foot in the thing and expanded the map onto the other side of 13. We weren't looking at doing anything on that side of 13. I am still opposed to this, and I will vote no tonight. Only because of the map. If we can chop off west of 13, I'll go for it, because that's where the problem is. Now, deer wander, yes, deer go all over the place. There probably are excess deer over here, but that's not where the complaints were coming from.
I would say that's not where the complaints that were coming from that came to the board meeting and expressed them. Both the DNR and I have received complaints, and they have been across the town. I would not share your sentiment about the DNR. The biologist has been very wonderful to work with and has filled out the permit. The piece of the map was, again, just to provide enough area where you would actually be able to harvest the deer and have opportunity to have hunting, rather than to limit it down so much that it wouldn't be successful. If you'd like to take off that side, then let's take off that side. If that makes the board more comfortable, that's fine. It just takes down the area in which you would likely achieve your 40 permits. That's all it does.
So
Can I just ask how many people here are north of D?
No, you said,
north of D?
no, he said 13.
East of 13.
East of 13.
West,
West of 13.
East of 13, we have a
Either
big
way, he's asking.
No, east of 13 and north of D.
No.
No, east of 13, south of
And,
D.
and that was one of my complaints was, I don't believe this has to be up north of D either.
It's just that little tiny thing.
We agree with you. The problem is,
Could I ask a question on the process of this?
yes.
I don't
So,
deny that. I've
it's-
never, may I come up to speak, please?
I think I might be able to answer, help with your question. So is the process that an individual homeowner, I live west of 13, you request this service? So I would then contact when this becomes available and say I would like the hunters to come to my house, or if I qualify.
Yes,
But-
but you would not qualify because you would not be highlighted in the permit we give to the DNR.
But if I'm in the permitted area by
Have to be in the
DNR,
shaded area.
I would request the service. So if
Yes.
I don't have a problem in my property if I live west of 13 and it's suggested that those of us that live west of 13 don't have a problem, we wouldn't be calling and asking for you to come and remove
Would not.
deer.
Correct.
So it's kind of a moot point. But then, I mean, there are times when there were 19 deer on my property, but that's because someone was feeding them. And DNR ticketed them, the feeding stopped, they stopped coming there. So I think we're making more of this than it has to be. Those people that have the problem are gonna be the ones requesting the service. Those that don't have a problem, they're not gonna request it. And, I don't know, seems like we're overcomplicating it.
Supervisor Minter?
But if I remember correctly, the issue with the west side of 13 was that is where some of the land is available that our town archers want to hunt, and unless they go and take their proficiency test, then they can't hunt there while this is going on. And again, I go back to if the primary problem appears from our perspective to be east of 13, around Sherwood, then, yeah.
And I, again, as mentioned prior, there's probably 2 or 3 permits that we issue on an annual basis, and we don't believe any deer have been harvested from any of those permits.
Chief Lauby?
And there's no deer over there.
During next agenda items, I'm going to recommend, I believe the town owns 60 acres on 14th Avenue, and that's the only chunk of land.
40.
I think there's 2 parcels. One's 50 when I looked at the map, and one is like 10. They abut each other and kind of run funny, but I'm going to request at the next agenda that those just be open and that we purchase signs that say archery hunting only and post them on there and get rid of the permits, because that's the only parcel we got, and then it's a first come, first serve basis. We've said we don't want hunting on our transfer site. We've said we don't want it on Derrick-Hughes because of the fence, and the other property we own over on Pennhurst is a tiny little 1/4 acre parcel. So, you know, it doesn't pay for me to issue permits, and then it's tied up when one guy only hunts it 10 times a year and then no one else can go on there. We post the signs that say open archery hunting, and those that wanna hunt our parcel can go hunt it then without a permit.
And is that parcel within this exclusion area?
It is on 14th Avenue, south of the church, so south of Alpine there is where
Could we
that
chop
parcel
that
would be.
part off of the map?
Sure.
Yeah.
How would, for our 2 town residents that deer hunt, bow hunt? could we-
That was my only issue. I wasn't against the harvesting, obviously, if I hunt. But, again, you can't stop a deer on property lines, as he stated. They are going to get across those property lines. I was just against them doing it within that section of the town that was given to the town strictly for recreation. And by stopping me from hunting there, you're telling me that, you know, the deer over there are migrating, what, 3 miles across, coming across the water, coming around D and everything and getting over there to that parcel.
This area of town, and it's
And as the
expanded
chief
this way.
attested to, there haven't been any deer taken out of there, at least not by me, in the last 4 years. So there is not an overabundance of deer over there.
I think bottom line is, I think we covered this pretty well this evening. If anybody feels they haven't had a chance to speak, but I think all the questions have been answered, I'll give you, but you did say we'll get reports. Everybody has to call that once deer dealt with, I won't use the, dealt with in their area, will call, right? And you'll give us reports, you'll deal with the neighbors, get that, so it's all in place. Overall, the reason we let the item die last time was a number of us were concerned with the expanded area. But it sounds like we might limit that down now based on some comments. So, one more comment and we're gonna end it there, cause we've got a few other items we have to cover this evening, so, yes.
Okay, I spoke with, the wildlife manager for this area who Jamie is speaking about. And, she said 2 things that she was concerned about that she wanted brought up at the meeting tonight. One was this advertised to all the residents prior to these just being put on the agenda so that they knew about it and what was going on? And 2 was, she said, there is absolutely supposed to be no hunting on public property in this area. So, and I don't know what is public property in this area or not. I know, Meteor Timber has a lot of public property, but I don't know if any of that's in this area or not. But that's what she told me today. I spoke with her today, and she said these permits cannot be allowed on public property. My other,
It's private property.
pardon?
It's all private property.
Timber's private.
Well, I know, I'm just making a statement. That's all I'm making a statement is what she said. And I believe Tom said his was public property, right? Were you honest?
Yeah, that's town.
It's town of Rome, it's not state property.
I believe she's talking state. When she says,
Okay.
when she says
Could
public
be.
property, I believe she's talking about state-owned property.
Yeah, I didn't ask that question.
Yeah, I'm sure she is.
And I never wanted to degrade these guys. I'm an archer, they're archers, never tried to degrade them, and I just want that point made. What I asked was, in the permit process, it says sharpshooters. And I said, I never heard of an archery sharpshooter. Never. I said, that's a rifle description, and it was made by the military. When I talked with our warden in this area, who is Wade Romberg, he said, absolutely, it is not, archery is not sharpshooter. The biologist said the exact same thing. There's no such thing as an archery sharpshooter. And I'm not saying they're not good, I'm just saying that.
All right.
And the other thing is, you do have all the records, and there is a shot to recovery rate. And I think the board should know whatever that shot to recovery rate is to ease their mind on how many wounded deer are getting away or things like that. I just think that's a point that needs to be made. I was never against anybody having the right to have them cull these deers down in that area. I stated that last time. I said, I'm not against the hunt. I'm just against the size of the hunt and where the hunt is. And I don't believe that hunt should be north of D. I really don't. I don't feel there's a deer problem up there. I have deer come on my property. They eat on my bushes once in a while. They eat on my wife's flowers, and my wife has a lot of flowers. So I'm just saying, and I deal with it, so.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Can you sign in your names? Anybody that came up and spoke, I hope you did sign our piece of, okay.
I have his
Okay.
name down.
Thank you.
This gentleman's name.
All right, thank you. Jackie was ready to make a motion.
I'd
Or-
like to make a motion.
Oh, you're ready to make,
Yeah,
oh,
Go ahead.
To approve hunting of 40 urban nuisance deer hunting permits per Wisconsin DNR recommendation with the exclusion of the property owned by the town of Rome
Off of 14th Avenue.
off of 14th Avenue.
I'll second the motion.
okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Cole, a second by Supervisor Bauerheit for the approval of 40 urban nuisance deer hunting permits per the Wisconsin DNR recommendation to be distributed through the, and can I correct the name, Attorney Flanagan, even though it's incorrect on the agenda, or would that be?
That would be just fine.
Okay, thank you, I wanted to make sure. So it's the
Multi-Metro Deer Management.
Multi-Metro Deer Management Group. Any more discussion? Oh, Cheryl.
Sorry, Cheryl Mann, 984 Fall Court. I just
You have
one
to
que-
come up and sign.
I just have one question. How then, would we be notified or would we be communicating
You can get a
with-
flyer.
Okay.
We'll print flyers or with
We
the
will
phone
have
number?
flyers available. We are not mailing flyers.
No,
to-
but we
yes.
have flyers we can hand out at the counter or?
At the counter, it'll be on Facebook, it'll be on, our website.
Site.
But and we would ask people to share it from the Facebook page, but we would not be mailing individually.
Correct, I
Got
didn't
it.
say
So if we're
mailing.
interested, we would come here or locate the information on social
Yep.
media
Yes.
somewhere? Okay, thank you.
If I may, Grand Rapids did the Facebook thing, so kind of be careful. It got shared like 50,000 times in 3 days, so.
Yeah, to broader areas
Boy,
probably.
it went crazy.
Maybe I think our website would be the safest, well, it's
Thank
up to
you.
you. Thank you,
Thank you.
all right.
We tell our residents to go to our website for official information.
Yeah, we
so
usually
that's
say
where we
that's
should
our
put it.
official website, our our website is the official place for information for the town.
So I should
Alright.
not post it on Facebook?
No,
No,
Okay.
I think we would get other organizations possibly responding to that.
Okay, then it will just go on the website. It will not go tomorrow because the map will have to be redone. It will go sometime next week.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
We had one more.
Take one more question, please.
Okay. Very brief, please.
Yes. Just this proposal morphed an awful lot since I came and offered comments a month ago when it was just some select town portions that were going to be open. Some of my concerns had to do with how the town had been closed to hunting and after the last incidents of Sherwood Forest being open to archery hunting, the residents asked that it be closed, and it was actually put in the ordinance. And some of this discussion with the attorney kind of clarified that a little bit, because I did wonder why it had been in the ordinance, and now it's no longer in the town code. But really, my biggest concern is just the recovery and the number of property owners where you need permission in order to retrieve a deer. I mean, you look at the best spin on the data put out by archery groups. A well-hit deer, it's not unusual for them to travel 200 yards. So we're talking first a 100-yard buffer from any house without permission, any dwelling, and then we're talking possibly a 200-yard perimeter there in order to have a good opportunity to retrieve a well-hit deer. I just don't think our little 1/4 acre to 1/3 acre lots in the community really afford themselves to that. So I want you to take that into serious consideration.
Sign into Dave.
Is there a do you have a comment regarding that statement?
I think we've already covered that.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
It's not a big enough area that we won't put anybody.
You won't put anybody there. Thank you. You covered it well. Thank you.
I would say, I think realistically, in the Sherwood area, 2, 3, 4 landowners going together and saying, yes, we'd like a hunter to come, is what it's gonna take.
I think it's
Otherwise-
I think it's going to take 10 to 12.
All right. All right.
How many hunters do you have?
All right, any more, sir, we're done now with discussion, please, we're closing discussion. We're closing discussion, sir, now, please. I think we've had enough, but thank you for your comments and your participation, we really do appreciate it.
Was there a second on the motion?
Yes, there
Bob
was, yes,
Supervisor
first and a second already, and we're ending discussion, so everybody, thank you very much for your participation, thank you. All right. What did you say?
I said, they're leaving before we vote.
I know, I guess they're taking it for granted. You're trusting us, huh? No, there they are. No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now,
Good luck. All right. Discussion and possible action. Agreement for building inspection services with Dan Hansen, Central Wisconsin Building Inspections LLC. And thank you, Dan, for your patience this evening.
Madam Chair, do you want to take these as two separate, or do you want to read the whole agenda item and?
Oh, and proposal for planning and design services with Samuel A. Schultz, Land and Use Development Designer.
And can I ask, Madam Chair, that before you would have a motion, that we could just do a little discussion?
Yes.
Just an explanation of what's in the
Move the
packet.
rules aside for discussion and presentation.
So there's a brief memo from me in the packet that just kind of outlines all the attachments. The agreement for the building inspection service you were previously provided. Where it is highlighted yellow is where the changes are. Again, noting that one of the changes is that your percentage discount would go from 20 to 10. Dan is already charging that $75 an hour, and we just get that 20% discount off of it. We've gotten 3 invoices. He bills every 2 weeks, and I have just a breakdown sheet in the packet of what those 3 invoices have been, what it is with the 20% and what it would be with the 10%. Understanding that that's, it's a 6 weeks, it's not an entire year. We know this is gonna fluctuate. It will likely be much less in the winter, it may be somewhat more in the summer, but we're just taking that average. So that would be, if we continued with that agreement, it would be the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We did cross-reference our, fee structure to make sure that all of the fees that are located in this inspection services are on the fee sheet, that we're charging correctly if any of those fees would be requested. So that's one item. The second item, the Von Briesen would be looking at Rome Town Center. That cost is not to exceed $5,000. Those 2 items feed into a draft zoning department budget that I've provided for you tonight. This is kind of the fiscal analysis, if you do the hybrid approach, how it would all fit together. So, the headline is, with this hybrid structure, the way I have it in this budget, it wouldn't take any levy to complete, because I took a 3-year average of our building permits, zoning permits, and other regular permits. And even on that 3-year average, I was still a little conservative just in case. So that brings your revenue that you're bringing in that permitting process to the 194,000. And then with your expenses on the second sheet, your legal, your building inspector, there wouldn't be a full-time position. Then in part-time, we already have Linda that assists us. She would be budgeted in here for 800 hours. And there would be an additional zoning administrative support person budgeted in for 1,200 hours at the rate of $990. We came to that rate because we have other administrative individuals, and with the 5% for next year would be at the $19.90. You still have some health insurance costs in this because of sick leave conversion. Your operations stays fairly flat, and then your contracted services, you're gonna see is that agreement for building inspection, your $5,000, not to exceed $5,000 with bond reason, and then your $1,540, which is your maintenance fee for Civitech. The other items came out of ARPA, so they would not be represented in the zoning budget. It's really, I put it in there both as the zoning hub and the code audit, but that $1,540 is your maintenance cost next year for your zoning hub. So you could have the budgets balance with your revenues that are coming in. Tonight likely what we would be looking for is the agreement of these two contracts. We would look at the zoning budget, but it would look, unless there's conversation tonight, fairly similar to what is provided here this evening. We'd look at that budget on Tuesday, but I felt like you needed to see all of it before you made a decision on one of it.
Just have one question about Linda, or administrative assistant, 800 hours. Is this work she's currently doing, or would you be asking her to do some new additional work?
This is work she's currently
Okay,
doing.
okay.
She's assisting with setting up files, she does the mailings for Plan Commission, she helps facilitate the minutes for Plan Commission, she does receipting for Dan, she does all of the filing, it's items that she's been doing for the past year.
No change,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
See, and apparently there was some misunderstanding, because when we originally talked about the HR audit, apparently there's some misunderstanding that employees are thinking that we're talking about a reduction of hours or employees. And when I spoke to you, it's not, we weren't talking about cutting hours or staff or lowering hours. And with the 800 hours, like you just explained, it's work that Linda already has. So it's not like giving her more work that she currently wasn't. So I just want to clarify that. And as far as assisting with other duties and being transferred as far as STRs and that sort of thing, that's already taking place with the transition document with the CSO, correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
I mean, we've talked, the training, that we haven't had a new application come in for them to follow one through, but I would expect that there would be, so they could follow one through still while I was here. The piece, though, that's missing is the Plan Commission piece. The CSO won't handle Plan Commission,
Absolutely.
which is a piece of that other 24 hours that would be in here. Someone still has to load that
That
agenda.
would be the zoning administrative support position?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Which I'm
there's-
thinking, yeah.
There is a missing link.
And I think there's room for discussion that might actually be the piece that, getting back to where we had someone at the front desk full-time, that maybe that's a separate position that is administrative support staff. That is to the clerk treasurer and other departments, like we used to have with Donna. Donna's position that we had, front desk greeter, answering the phones and doing administrative stuff that's in the transition plan that's really above the pay grade of a town administrator, which we see in the transition plan. So that might be something that we want to seriously consider. They can greet the guests coming in, answer the questions, people ringing the bells, because how often does people in the back offices get interrupted, you yourself, with the bell ringing and people having to get up and go to the front desk. So I don't want Linda to think, that she was gonna be getting additional work, that hours were being cut and this was gonna be dumped on her, which was evidenced by a letter we all received, so that was unfortunate.
Would you expect the $5,000 to be in the Community Development Authority budget for next year to pay for the Von Briesen contract?
Yes, because it's for the Rome Town Center.
Okay.
You can put that there.
And that would help with the housing projects that are on the back burner that are quickly coming forward. In fact, I wanted to talk to you about some dates, so. I think that's a great place for it. Dan, there was a charge on here that we had, it said 1 to 2 family dwellings, new structures and additions. I think there was a question about that last time. Was that new? Should we?
That was just referenced. I think what we did was we took a look at our fee schedule just to confirm that that was being reflected right now in our fee schedule, and it was referred that it is. And so we don't have a concern with that as far as.
I thought, okay.
You were right.
I was, okay, thank you. I thought it was familiar. All right, thank you.
I'll move forward, I'll recommend that we move forward on both pieces.
I think we ought to separate these things so we can vote on them separately.
All right, I'll move that we accept the agreement with building inspection services and with Mr. Hanson, Central Wisconsin Building Inspections LLC.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel, a second by Supervisor Bauerheit for the building inspection services with Dan Hansen, Central Wisconsin Building Inspections LLC. And for clarification, he is providing building inspection and zoning services at this time.
Correct.
Which are going fairly well, is that not correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
minor zoning items, yes, yeah.
Yep.
Anything that relates, zoning that relates to building.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you, Dan, for your services. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second
A
item.
motion to accept the proposal for planning design services from Von Briesen and Roper in the amount not to exceed $5,000, and that would be for a 2024 contract for the Rome Town Center,
To be in the Community Development Authority budget.
to be in the Community Development Authority budget.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Capel, a second by Supervisor Cole for the proposal for planning and design services with Samuel A. Schultz from Von Briesen and Associates for the land use and development designer services to be in the Community Development Authority budget for an amount not to exceed $5,000. Discussion?
Yeah, Madam
All
Chairman?
those yes?
The way I read this is a proposal to provide a list of projects and financial analysis for those projects and a plan to review services for developers. I don't think we need that. I think what we need is a plan to attract small businesses to the Rome Town Center. And in view of our budget constraints, I'm not in favor of spending $5,000 for this.
Any more discussion?
I think he's wrong, but that's my opinion.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have it. Okay. I make a motion for a 3-minute recess.
We want to just finish the zoning budget and then do that, since we're.
Oh.
No,
Oh, we
zoning
don't
budget,
need,
yeah,
that's
no,
just going for
you-
referral, okay.
Yep,
Yes.
you'll see it on
Or
Tuesday,
next time,
and you'll
okay.
see it with that change.
Well, then I'm all for I second
Thanks,
the
Dan.
break.
Oop, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I thought, go ahead.
All right, your turn to back up. I wait for you. You're next in line. All cars in order. Otherwise we run over each other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You get snacks next time, right?
No, no one gets snacks. Well, I stopped at Quick Trip before I came.
Bill, I can't believe you
I
didn't
should
bring
have
any
brought
snacks.
a second diet bagel, you know, I mean, it was not really enough.
Yeah.
So Wendy would be excited to talk to you about the 3CX thing. Do you wanna see what it looks like? I got my phone with me.
You have snacks. Water.
There's cups there, do you want some?
There are cups now?
Yes. Well, there's just little ones.
I know, but last time there
Do you
wasn't
need a
any, remember?
snack? I have a granola bar.
No, Marcus is like, text me on your iPhone, I'll order pizza. I was like,
Of course, we probably
I
won't have
live
time
2
to
minutes
talk.
away,
because
you
we're
should put
gonna
it in
recess
now.
this
I
over
did
before
it
the
last
clock, right?
night because I didn't get home till.
Oh, you understand? Okay, so anyhow, so what it is so it's an app on my phone.
I just spend the night with
And
you.
so now I come in here, and now this is like if I was on my desk phone at work right now. So, what is your? There we are.
Understanding, but just, then the plan will be to have
Yes.
at least a proposed position description, because I think that we can go through the budget and really get some comfort without seeing what that person might look like. I think you set the stage well, and now I think we just need to get that position description vetted. I'll probably take a first shot. I saw that you sent over, thank you, and so then I think we can probably have that ready for Tuesday. I don't know if I'm gonna be here on Tuesday. I don't know.
Oh, here, send, there it is, I hit the wrong button. So you hit the send button.
Yep.
And
I
then
have to organize my neighborhood.
I select that.
With 100% sign up. 'Cause there, I
What
don't,
neighborhood are you in?
I don't know a person that won't sign that in my neighborhood.
That's right.
Well, there's only 40.
40, yeah. We'll make a dent in it.
And it says that it came from my desk phone at Assumption. So now if you text me
I
back,
need to sign up
it'll
for.
come back to this
You
phone,
didn't pick me one of them.
even though my
I
actual cell
haven't
phone
done
is
dentist
not
in
that
a
number.
long time.
There you go.
That's the beauty of 3CX.
I'll put your name in.
Is, and you don't need, like, for
As long as
example,
it's
we have one
already-
where we didn't need the.
So what do you get then? Is it all packaged
You
up?
can,
If somebody has this.
if you wanna go that route, or you can get it quartered, I just don't like the part where you text it.
Where you what?
Where you have to take the hair off.
Oh, I'm not taking any hair
No,
off.
so
I didn't think about
but
that.
we usually cut our own
I'm
off.
thinking, isn't it like all wrapped up in
You
white
can, I
paper
don't
with
like
writing
it that
on
way,
it?
cause then you leave phones and stuff.
Totally
in there
unanticipated.
sometimes.
Well, don't you just take the back strap out and process the rest for hamburger for the most part?
No, I take all the meat and cut it up in little chunks and I use it like in, gravy over rice or in,
I just want the
I'm so
$10.
tired, I can't think of things right now, but, beef stroganoff, I use venison in that.
Yeah, beef chunks and hamburger for the most part, plus that back strap, that's the piece that most people want, I think.
You're like, no, not here.
Depends how much they run, because then they build up adrenaline in their body and the muscle tissues get.
Okay, in it to win it.
Hunter tells me if they're shot fast with a gun.
We're in the
that
home
wouldn't go
stretch.
down, they're more tender.
I do have questions on this sheet here, though.
Show the phone thing.
They would get the adrenaline.
Is there room for that
You
tonight?
can ask those tonight. That's fine.
We're talking about 3CX.
Just really quick?
Yeah.
He's meeting with
Do you wanna ask this before we start, police?
Yeah, really quickly,
Okay.
if there's room for it.
There's room.
We're back in session. But I do have question regarding,
I think you should, because we still are under specific, or under budget, so I would read item number 2.
all right, I will do that, thank you. Item 20, discussion and possible action, specific 2024 budgets being reviewed, police and fire, and there's no fire chief.
He's
he-
indisposed, but it is okay.
Is that, okay.
That's the police
Oh,
chief.
I'm sorry.
Let me
All right.
introduce him.
You have a
He's-
new
he's-
title. I'm the
She's-
administrator, I'm Jamie, this is Nick.
Now we're getting goofy. All right. Just a question on the resolution 2214, which is the wages from last, for 2023, this year, per diems that you gave us last week with budget.
Yep.
Under the deputy clerk treasurer, that doesn't reflect the dollar increase that she received for training.
That is correct.
So that's her what she gets normally, but she's still currently getting $1 for training, correct? Thank you. Underneath the police admin assistant court clerk, and then we have the public works administrative assistant, which I assume is Linda,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay, so that would be Linda. I would say the difference between the 1728 and then the 1895 for the court clerk, police admin assistant, that 167 would be due to the court responsibilities.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. That's why I wanted the clarification. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on, specific budgets for police, since the imaginary fire chief is not here.
So, police, I would note in prior year revenue, the last couple years, we have brought forth some prior year revenue in police. That 18.4 represents, their insurance recoveries and property sales from this year just being brought forth into their budget. Levy does go up 2% in this, other revenues stay pretty flat. As far as the budget, it does reflect that, in expenses, it does, reflect a 5% wage increase. We do have a contract with our police department. They did negotiate for a 3. We would do a side letter, which we could bring back next week, that would reflect that 5%. That would have to be a side letter to the agreement, because that would be different than our approved labor agreement with them. We also would have some slight changes to start of hours and their maximum sick leave banks. After 2012, all of the town staff max out at $960 for a sick leave bank. We've asked if the police department would accept a maximum, and they said they would accept 1,200 hours. We do a sick leave conversion at the end if you retire and take a WRS annuity. We had asked, and they said they agreed with the potential of that 5% wage being put into place. So we could bring that side letter back next week. Then everything else is fairly flat within the budget. I would note under police capital outlay, we do budget for 2 squad replacement next year. So you are gonna see that goes up from the 94,000 to the 110,000. We just feel like it's important for the squad replacement. We've got a series of 2017s that need to be taken out of the rotation. In addition to that, it's been incredibly difficult to get squads, so if we can get them next year, we'd like to be able to purchase them and to change out squads in the fleet. Chief, do you have anything to add?
If there's questions.
I did good.
So you think you'll get your 2 squads that you need on time? No delays this year?
I have no idea what the market looks like. The numbers should come out in the next couple of weeks, but I've asked to get those numbers months ago, and still, I was told that it's still down the road, so I have no idea, but we're gonna have to do something. We have 4 2017s in the fleet. It's only recommended to run the cars to 5 years old, so we've already 6 years old. We've already exceeded that going into next year with 4 of the vehicles.
So we don't know. I mean, the other piece that influences that now is the strike. So
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
but we'd like to, if we can get the squads, we'd like to get the squads.
Right, right. It was just during COVID and that it took forever to get.
Under training, I just have a question. Have we ever done training in the event of any sort of mass shooting or shooter, like unfortunately we see happening too often?
Some officers have gone, they've generally gone, Nakusa had a scenario at the school. We also all went down to the Adams Friendship
High school.
District and did a active shooter training
Okay.
a couple of years ago, so the officers do get exposed to that, though we don't have a school or.
That's all I meant, that
We
there's-
still go to different schools and participate in their trainings.
Okay, thank you. Do you have tasers, but you don't train? There's no money set aside for taser training, but do you have tasers?
Yes, the tasers were replaced under that, some of the training cartridges, and now we have cartridges yet to train next year with, so.
Oh, that's what that is, okay.
Do you think there would ever be a need to add or at some point down the road, with the issue in the county and in increasing the need for a drug dog or a vehicle with a cage, so there could be a drug canine? Or do you think there's enough service from the county yet that would be further down the road for us?
If we were going to, install a program like that, I'm guessing we could get it by donation, because I believe that the counties around us actually have excess funds. Just from, those dogs are usually funded by donation. If you go around and take a collection, it would just be a decision of the town.
If you suspected you had a problem, would you be able to go to some other community and borrow one?
We've had the dogs come from other areas here. If we had our own, you would probably get more, stops. There's case law with how you can use those dogs, so like, you can't really call a dog on a traffic stop from Rapids to come here, because there's case law that you can't delay the motorist to bring the dog here to do what the dog does. So if you had your own, you'd be able to, you would probably have more drug stops in the traffic area, and certainly if you had somebody go missing, you would have a shorter response time. If an elderly person went missing and you needed to track them, the dog would be here versus coming from a different area. We have called for dogs numerous times and found that there's none available in our surrounding counties, and gotten turned down for the request for a dog just because there wasn't one.
Yeah, I think Adams County has what, is it 2 or 3 dogs?
2, I believe.
2. And he has a big fundraising campaign to help fund that.
to make
It's
right.
not cheap.
No, I
And
understand.
Nakusa has one, I believe. The veterinary service for those dogs is usually donated, but what I've been told is that it's all funded by donation.
It is, yeah.
And I know the Nakusa one, I believe that was funded by donation as well. They have a canine, so
Okay.
if that's something the board's interested in, we sure can look into starting a donation campaign to get one down the road.
Starting with a golf outing at Lake Arrowhead maybe, or, I mean, there's lots of them there for that.
Next week. No,
I think
the-
Lila's, oh no, that's a ATV ride for Lila's retirement, or Layla's retirement. But
October 3rd, there's a golf outing at Papa Bears that's sponsored by the Morning Rotary Club in Wisconsin Rapids. They do one every year for the canine in
Great.
Nakusa.
And they're selling sweatshirts right now too, and t-shirts to raise money for the dogs down in Adams County, so if anybody's interested, buy one.
So is that a future agenda item to consider this?
That'd be a nice
Or-
idea. We could do that. Put the PFC on that too to help us, because Karen, recent appointee, did a lot of fundraising in her old community. Was it West Bend?
East Troy.
East Troy, yes, thank you. So, yeah, we could do that. I like that idea. Thank you. So, all right, I have a question really quick here, because I've seen this on the fire one too, the Lexipol policies and procedures. Is that something that gets updated annually then, that it's budgeted for every year, that's for like police and fire? Each department has their own policies and procedures manuals that you follow?
It's updated more than once a year. It's ongoing updates through, they release as things change or case law comes out, they release updates.
So you're on top of all of the ordinances and laws, or state laws or fed laws that you need to abide by?
Correct. If state law, if there's like all the stuff going on around the country with protests, they change policies on use of chokeholds and other things like that. That all came out through the Lexipol.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
With the exception of the squads, I think it's a pretty bare bones budget, so I would like to move approval,
Well, and just a note on that,
including the 2 squads, though.
does that mean you're doing all the work on them again?
Yeah, I'll set them up
Set
like
up.
I did in the past.
I'll make the second that we approve the police department budget and for discussion. So we have a motion by Supervisor Capel, a second by Chairwoman Jumati to accept the police department budget as presented. Just want to make a comment that we save a lot of money every time we take delivery of a new squad car or vehicle, because the chief sets those vehicles up every time we take delivery of them. And it's a lot of work, because I've seen the boxes and the packages that are laying on the floor when I drive by the building, and it takes them a lot of time, so thank you, chief, because I'm sure that saves us a lot of money. So, do you have an estimate on what that takes and how much time? No?
I have not gone out, but the nearest place that you can get them done now is La Crosse, the place in Plover that we used to have them upfitted, moved to La Crosse, so you got the time to drive the car over there, drive it back, and when we were having those building, or companies do it, we'd get the car back and the battery would go dead, or something wouldn't be connected right, that's why I just started doing it myself.
Thank you. Saves us a lot of money.
About 7,000 a squad, 6 to 7,000 a squad.
Is that what it is? All right.
I mean, that's what we budget for, it is 6 to 7,000 a
That's
squad,
what,
so
that's
I,
in material, not labor.
that's not labor.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
you got the materials, but then you got labor. So, all right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Fire.
Oh, shoot, I put it away.
So fire would not have any prior year revenues carried over next year. We had done that in the past when we were going through the process of updating the SCBA's. Their insurance fire dues are committed to that budget. That's the fees that they get from insurance fire dues annually that are saved up. Property tax levy, you can see there does have a 7% increase. In fire insurance dues for us is the 33,000, and then that 578, which we talked about before from Saratoga. But in addition to that, the charge for their service for fire protection is just a little bit further down. That's $38,500 annually that we receive. As far as expenses, it does reflect the 5% increase for the chief position. The part-time position is really based off of annual averages of how much time is being spent there. So the raise goes to the base, and then as they get certifications, there's additions that are added to that base. But our number that we budget there is based on number of hours and an average over a series of years. The training stays the same. Operations does go up slightly. Other items are pretty level, if only a minimal increase. Your insurance fire dues, we do not intend to spend that 113, but we have to present a balanced budget, so you'll see that your 90 is in there as your reserve that you're carrying forward. You know, you might spend some of that, but to be balanced, that's where that number goes. And then in capital outlay, there's 3 SCBA's to finish our rotation next year. There is a new UTV. Our UTV now is broken. It's not operational. So when we've needed one, we've asked for other departments' assistance, and that what's in capital outlay would be the replacement of that UTV.
Is it possible to use some of the insurance dues to offset some of these expenses this year? To assist in that?
We potentially could. I would just need to double check with chief. There are rules around that if the UTV would qualify, but then I guess I would look for the board if the UTV does qualify.
Wouldn't the SBCA's, finishing out the SBCA's, because those are official fire equipment, that covers equipment, more so than a UTV.
And again, I can ask that question. I would just be looking for the board of how much. You certainly wouldn't want to spend it all down, but
Well,
if there would be a
absolutely.
dollar amount that you would want to take from there, how much would that dollar amount be?
Is the U,
3 SBCA's.
They're breathing apparatuses, but see, their equipment, there's only certain things you're allowed to spend fire insurance dues on, and the purpose of fire insurance dues is when you pay your homeowner's insurance, that all goes into a pot at the state, and then they divvy it up, and it goes to municipalities to spend on equipment for the departments, and then they stipulate in the fire insurance dues information what the department can spend it on, and it starts with equipment, certain items like that. In fact, there's a financial paper out by the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, I think, or that tells you what they can spend it on. So SCBA's would be one of the items that you could spend that on. So I think that would at least cover the rest of our SCBA's for the year. Wait a minute, or no, I'm looking in the wrong line. Yeah, 11,000.
11,520.
So that would bring, that, I mean, we've got $113,000 in fire, or no, wait a minute, let me see here. 90, I'm sorry. So we
90
could,
what you're carrying forward in your.
right, so we could easily cover our SCBA's and not use levy dollars I mean, that's what that money is. People pay into insurance and then we use it to buy our equipment. I think that would be a valid expense.
Were there estimates for the UTVs, or
That is
just
based
a-
off an estimate that, yep.
Is there special equipment in there? That's an awful lot of money for a UTV.
I was gonna say the same.
17,000 for mine.
Yeah.
It goes faster.
And what's wrong with our existing one, the reason it can't be repaired?
I'm sorry, I do not recall, but it is not repairable. Chief, do you recall why it's not repairable?
The axle is broken on it, and they don't make the part to repair it because of how old the chassis is that it's on. But I believe it has a special equipment on there to bring people out of the woods that are injured like
Yeah,
that.
I'm assuming that's what it's for.
Can't some of that stuff be moved from the old one to the new one then?
I think when they bought the original one, I think they do move the equipment, but that's just how much, because it's not a regular sized ATV, it's much longer on a special frame, and that's what led to, with the axle being broke, it's not just a normal axle that you go to Country Sports and get, it's a specialty piece for that machine that's no longer being manufactured.
Is that, do they have two UTVs or ATVs? Cause I saw one that says on the side, purchased by the Rome Fire Department Fund. That's their own separate fund. So do they have two different units, do you know, Chief? We're probably putting you on the spot because you're not the
I'm
right
sure. I
chief,
know
but,
that the one, I know just from Mark saying the one they're talking about is the one they use for rescue.
so this one is big.
It's long, because it has a full, like,
It's got the
bed on it to
stretcher.
put a person on to bring them out.
And I do believe the previous one was donated to the town from the fund.
The fund, so they must be different then, because that one can't be $48,000, okay. So if we have 90,000 in there, I think, equipment, I mean, if the fund, I don't know what they have in their fund, and we have no say over that, that's private donations that they do an appeal for every year. But if some of the insurance dues can help offset the cost of equipment that's purchased with levy dollars, I think the SCBA's would be a good place to start.
Should be-
And then where are the tires? I know we had tires this year, that was part of that, we were taking those, we weren't
Tires
buying,
are in your operations.
right, we weren't taking that all out in one year, we kind of spread that out over a couple of
Yes.
years, right?
Yep, so there are tires in operations again this year.
See, when you get into outlay, and then you have operations, I mean, 11,000 to me, capital outlay to me is very large expenses, so,
Well, it can not only be very large expenses, it can also be equipment that lasts a very long time.
right, that's
So,
true,
Those SCBA's last
a very long
a
time.
You know, you're not gonna go out and buy another one next year.
True. And we just donated the ones that they said weren't really usable anymore to Nicaragua, so. Well, I would move that we would at least, use the insurance dues to cover the SCBA's. The 3 SCBA's for $11,520.
Is that
Do you need it in a motion, or just
think we
suggest
need
that we?
them.
Yeah, just move it so that we're not using use the fire insurance dues to take it off of the levy.
just given the time of the day, why don't I readjust, noting that change, cause I'm seeing consensus for that, and then this one can come back on Tuesday for an actual motion.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I would ask the chief too if we can forego the expense for the UTV.
But we don't have one, so if we forego the expense, then we won't have one.
Right.
I don't think we can.
I think we need to
not
be able to
having-
rescue people
Seems safe
off the
not
road.
to have one.
I disagree. We need to be able to
Well, I just
rescue
wonder
people.
how many times it's ever been used even.
I can ask him
I
that.
think, Bob, that gets used quite a bit actually, because anytime somebody, we just had one a few weeks ago, somebody went around the corner down there, and I believe he's waiting for Big Flats to come up here, but I'm not gonna speak for him, but I've seen that in operation and used many times.
So they actually take it out on a car, or they tow it on a trailer, or what?
They got it all set up in that building on a trailer, hooked to a
Trailer.
truck, and
Now I
they
know
go
which
right
one
out
they're
there.
talking about.
Okay.
It's on a big, long trailer. Now I know which one.
And we have been waiting for Big Flats. When, we just call for mutual aid and Big Flats has been able to assist.
If we could find out how often it goes out, though, I think that might be beneficial.
I made a
to
note.
the decision.
I will ask that question.
And if any of the old equipment can be moved from the old UTV to the new one to help mitigate some of that expense.
Might there be a possibility too that they would consider making a request to the fund to help split the cost, maybe? I know we can't insist that they do it, but maybe they would help do it. With the, cause they make an annual appeal and get donations.
I will ask those 3 questions.
It's gonna come back to flat.
Yeah, and I heard you, what did you say, Bill?
It's gonna come back to us with the
Yeah,
changes.
yeah,
and With the
okay.
questions answered, so.
So that one will come back. All right, so we're done with number 20. All right, so, do we want to do 21? Move on to 21? Do we think it'll take us long? Bill? You have that information?
I don't know. If there's any questions, we'll go in, find
All
out.
right, we can make it go quick?
I
All
will
right.
try.
All right, as long as we're here. All right, number 21, the board may go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Stat, Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, for consideration of Rome Water Utility Operator and Training / charge, compensation, and benefits.
I'll move that we go into closed session to consider as stated.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel, second by Supervisor Bauerheit, that we go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Stat, Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub C, to consider the Rome Water Utility Operator in Charge, or Training / charge, compensation, and benefits. Roll call vote, starting from my left, please.
Capel, yes.
Jumati, yes.
Cole, yes.
Bauerheit, yes.
We'll go into closed session.
Here's your stuff back, Bill. No, you're good. You're good.
Melissa, if you want to go, I can take the minutes for the rest of the
You okay?
evening. Yep, yep.
We do have some stuff to sign, but
Okay, you wanna leave it by my desk, I can sign it.
I have to attest
Oh,
to
you
it.
have to
Will you
attest
be
it?
around? Do you wanna stop in tomorrow? It's just
No,
your
I
sign.
don't have time tomorrow.
Well, I'll wait, just go in.
All
Just go
right,
in.
okay.
I'll wait.
All right, you stay.
problem.
Are you gonna?
I'll do it. I'm making the motion.
That's fine.
Are we? So you ready? No, not ready, hold on. Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, did I take my water in there? Oh. It's all right. I did.
Okay, now ready.
The board reserves the right to enter into open session authorized by Wisconsin State Stat, Section 1985, Sub 2, to take possible action, to possibly take action from the closed session and continue with the agenda.
I move that we go back into open session.
Second.
We have a motion by Supervisor Capel, second by Supervisor Minter, to return into open session as authorized by Wisconsin State Stat, Section 1985, Sub 2. Roll call vote, starting on my left.
Capel, yes.
Minter, yes.
Jamadi, yes.
Cole, yes.
All right, yes.
Right, we have a motion and to be made.
8:13 PM.
Yeah, I move that we increase the Rome Water Utilities operator in charge salary by an additional $1.50 per hour to bring the base hourly rate to $30.85 for the remainder of calendar year 2023. And in addition, I move that the operator in charge be granted a sufficient number of hours of vacation for the remainder of calendar year 2023. That would bring his sum total of vacation to 80 hours for the calendar year.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Supervisor Minter and a second by Supervisor Bauerheit to increase the water utility operator in charge wage by $1.50 and for the remainder of 2023 and his vacation to a total of 2 weeks.
80 hours.
Or 80 hours, I'm sorry, 80 hours. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next agenda items. We had, number one, a review of the transition plan document for the administrator position, and we have the administrative support for zoning services and the plan commission meetings. And then we also had one Supervisor Bauerheit wanted to bring up. If he wants to word that, we'll discuss it.
Yeah, I'd like to, at the next meeting, have a proposal from GovHR to replace our town administrator.
You mean for the advertising for the.
For the
posting?
advertisement and the cost of doing that and representing that person, yeah.
Are you making that a motion?
No, it's just the next agenda item.
Don't have to.
Okay.
And for next meeting, you mean October 5th, not on Tuesday?
I was just going to say, could we just clarify a couple things, because for your Tuesday meeting, could we? I
The
think-
Tuesday meeting is for items 1 and 2.
Yes, just making sure, because I think those things will feed to your consideration of the zoning department agenda, or, sorry, budget. And so it would make sense that we will work on a, position description for that administrative assistant zoning, just so you can start to see, how that last piece fits in there.
Yeah.
And I also want to add an agenda item that we look at creating a position job description for a full-time administrative assistant position.
In addition to the zoning administrator?
Yes, that's correct. Because after reviewing the administrator position transition document, if people looked at it, you'll see that there's many items on there that are strictly of an administrative assistant nature. So we'll look at that as well.
Would that go into general?
Yes.
Yes. I also want to get the fees for what it would be to advertise on Indeed. Also, advertise with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, as well as the WTA, and other low-cost sources for municipal employees, including the Wisconsin County and Managers Association, which they also have postings, because the last response to our GovHR was very minimal for the expense.
And it'll be on the website too if we do post an opening, right?
Yes.
Website. Because it's possible there may be a qualified person here within town that would want to apply for it.
Can I just ask, what are we thinking when you say this full-time administrative assistant, just because general would come on Tuesday? What are you thinking as a wage placeholder in that?
$22.50, which is what, similar to what you currently have for the clerk treasurer
Okay,
deputy.
so Tuesday would be the budgets for general, highway would return, fire would return. We're gonna, try and do parks and library. Chairwoman asked for building and grounds to return and zoning. Then, do we need to revisit? Do you want to see that administrative assistant position or the zoning positions as individual items, or can those be handled as part of the budgets?
Just general
Yes.
thoughts to it. I think you would have the zoning one as an individual agenda
Correct.
item, maybe before the budget.
Okay.
So
Correct.
we can flesh that out and maybe mold that if needed. And you can also then, with its own agenda item, you can talk about recruitment for that position as well, if you do choose to move forward with it.
Because that's the important piece, that's the glue to the other two pieces we just voted on this evening.
Correct.
And while we're talking about meetings, on open book on Monday,
You do not need to be there.
No.
No.
In fact, they
That's
won't
not for
let
you
be
unless
there.
you wanna argue about your value.
No, it's just, it was an awareness, so you knew that it was
Yeah,
occurring, but you don't have
those-
to be there.
Those are,
but we had
Right.
board members present at open book before.
No,
No,
you're
not at
ta-
open book.
you're talking only board of review.
Okay.
Then
Because we had board of review meetings where we didn't have anybody come anyway, so.
Yeah.
Do we have a placeholder in the budget for town administrator?
it is in the general budget, so, I mean, we did the calculations, again, including family insurance.
Yep.
So it would come forth as in the general budget with family insurance, and that's where we would add this full-time admin position.
you currently have a placeholder of $145,000, I believe, with family insurance. That was what we were
Insurance.
given last
Okay.
week.
Okay,
With a 5% increase,
just as we work through all this to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
and then we were given the number today for the part-time position for zoning, the
For
24 hours.
Zoning at the $19.90, yep. And that would be equal to some of the other administrative positions that we have.
Correct.
But then I don't need to list that separate admin position, as a separate agenda item under general, because if
I-
that is pursued. Or do you wanna see that as a separate agenda item?
I think it would be appropriate
For what now?
for a separate agenda item for the administrative assistant position to assist the clerk treasurer if we go down, because we're
We need to
discussing.
flesh out a job description.
Right,
Are we going to have both of those descriptions by Tuesday?
No,
Think so.
no.
Chat GPT.
Yeah, I
No.
don't think so.
cheating, no.
Well, we have the transition list on Tuesday,
The
so
importance of that glue piece.
that's the most important piece.
Okay,
When is our last budget meeting?
the 12th.
So then why don't we do the general budget on the 12th?
No, general budget is too big, you're gonna need to see it twice.
Okay, all right, so then we
So-
can always add that other piece then
Let me
and
bring
still
up-
have time for discussion.
Yeah, let me bring up prelim on Tuesday, and then,
Cause I have to look at that tonight yet, or tomorrow early and approve it and get it back to you.
what are we talking about?
The agenda you sent me,
Oh.
so.
Well,
Do
it's
we
gonna
wanna-
change, so don't look at it tonight, cause now it'll change.
Okay.
Do we want to start earlier if we have more? We're starting at 3 p.m. currently.
No, we should still be okay, because it's really just those, likely those two separate, we will add in, the side letter for the union piece, and then those budgets, and if general isn't gonna be approved, but it's just gonna be preliminary, it should be just fine. Transition plan would be a separate agenda item then too.
And there were some updates to that too with the EMS meeting that we had talked about.
I can make those updates and then I will hand distribute that, I won't include that as part of the packet.
Okay.
So 3 p.m. start.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be here as close to 3 as I can be. I have to meet with my head cook at 2:00.
Well, if she makes brownies for you to bring, then, hey, take your time. Alrighty then, any more items? Any more items?
So just a friendly reminder as we go to next meeting date, it's Tuesday, the 26th, 3 p.m. Then we return back to our regular Thursday.
You won't
I'm
be here Tuesday.
No, I'm here. That's why.
Oh,
it
that's
was
right.
Tuesday, yeah.
We gotta keep,
I leave Wednesday.
I
that's
thought it was
Wednesday, that's
Monday.
right.
No.
Well, we'll give you a nice send-off.
Yeah,
Dan's
apparently
bringing,
Dan's
Dan's
bringing
bringing brownies. Alrighty, we're adjourned.
Golfing.
Meeting adjourned 8:23 p.m.